There was a really tragic death at the Fort Harrison Hotel back in 1995. Lisa McPherson was a woman who was a devout Scientologist for many, many years. She was having a mental breakdown, and she got involved in a little fender-bender accident right outside the Fort Harrison Hotel. And when the paramedics arrived on the scene, she had taken off all of her clothes and was walking down the street naked. And this female paramedic comes up and says, "Why are you doing this?" And she said, "I need somebody to pay attention to me. I need help."
What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show. Mark, thank you so much for coming, man. I really appreciate you coming up here on a Saturday, too.
Well, it is an exciting trip.
And you are the son of a bitch who leaked the Tom Cruise videos that we all now get to enjoy from inside Scientology.
Well, yeah. There were a team of people who actually got that video. It was a DVD direct from Scientology. And it was only supposed to be shown in the orgs. So,
in the what?
In a Scientology org. That's what they call their churches. It's an organization or org. And public would come in and they'd be sat down and they'd be watching this Tom Cruise DVD. Oh my God, this is the biggest moment in Scientology history. And then we leaked it online, and it was pretty remarkable to see that video go all around the world. And for like a solid week, every single TV show, that was back in 2008. Every place you looked, it was popping up. And by Friday night, I finally had a chance to relax, put my feet up, and sit back on the sofa and turn on 2020, where they were doing a piece on it. And I just looked over at my computer and said, that video came from that computer right there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And do we have those, Alessi? I'm ready to go. Just for people to get a little refresher on what we're working with here, we'll put this on the screen. So which one is this?
This is his...
Like the speech?
No.
Oh,
this is the introduction to this event.
All right, let's play this real quick. We got the volume.
In this world, there still remains one more word on the man. Call it Tom Cruise on Tom Cruise Scientologist.
They're so corny.
I think it's a privilege to call yourself a Scientologist. It's something that you have to earn. And because a Scientologist does, he or she has the ability to create new and better realities and improve conditions. Being Scientologist, you look at someone and you know absolutely that you can help them. So for me, it really is KSW, and it's just like, it's something that I don't mince words with that, with anything that LRH does, but that policy to me has really gone, boy. And there's a time I went through and I said, you know what? When I read it, I just went, yeah. Being a Scientologist, when you drive past an accident, it's not like anyone else. As you drive past, you know you have to do something about it because you know you're the only one that can really help. But that's what drives me, is that I know that we have an opportunity and to really help for the first time.
All right, let's cut that one here. We'll put the link to this in the description because this is like 9 minutes or something, and you can watch it. It's pretty hilarious.
Oh, it's brilliant. And this, it's crazy to us, but Scientologists are going, wow,
yeah,
that's great. He's right. KSW, which stands for Keeping Scientology Working. An important policy letter that Ron Hubbard wrote. Before you do any course, you have to read the KSW to keep Scientology working.
Got it.
So
good to know.
Yeah.
And then, Alessia, we have the other one just for people to see like how cringe the actual audience is. This was the other leak you had where he's accepting a big award.
Right.
That I think Miscavige, we're going to get to these people, by the way. Like,
Yeah,
if you're listening
Miscavige.
out there and you don't know some of the names that were just said, like, we're going to get through all these people in the history. Mark knows all this stuff. But he, I think, invented this medal specifically to give it to Tom Cruise. Is that right?
Yeah, they had to create something extra special for Tom. So the Freedom Medal of Valor, and they kept giving it year after year after this, but this was the first one, I believe.
Got it. All right, let's play this real quick. And this is back in like maybe 07, something like that.
2007, 2008.
Got it. So these are all Scientologists in the crowd.
Yeah.
This is in Clearwater?
No, this is, I think, in L.A.
Yeah. I love the Mission Impossible music in the background. It's so cringe.
And he probably did not get permission from Paramount for that.
Oh, no. It's Tom Cruise. You're not going to say no.
Sure.
Look at the medal.
Oh, it's his proudest moment.
Is Miscavige short, too?
Oh, he's tiny. Yeah.
Yeah. That's part of the
He's
issue.
well over 4 feet tall.
Yeah, Tom Cruise is like 5'4", and Miscavige is like, looks like he's 5.
It's Miscavige, by the way.
Miscavige, I keep saying that. He'll
Well,
get
that's why
offended.
I'm here. You know, I got to set you straight.
Can we cut forward to the speech, LS? Cut forward, yeah. A little more.
Oh my God, they're just screaming. I'm really, really honored to be here with you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your confidence in me. I've personally been very privileged to see what you do to help, to protect, to serve all of us.
All right, that's enough. We'll put the link in the description. You guys get the picture. So basically, this is like a psycho convention.
Well,
that they
this
had.
was a very fascinating period of Cruise's career, though, because when this came out, he was in the process of firing his top-of-the-line publicist, Pat Kingsley, and he hired his sister she's a Scientologist as well, of
course,
to handle his career. And immediately trouble began because, Pat Kingsley was saying, let's not talk about Scientology. But once she was gone, bam!
Let's go.
Cruise was out there jumping on Oprah's couch.
Yes.
And going on the Today Show and
Matt
saying,
Lauer, that interview.
Matt, you're glib.
You're glib, Matt. You're so glib.
and at that point, he had an office on the Paramount lot, and he got kicked off the lot. His contract ended. The like 90-year-old guy who ran Paramount at the time, Sumner Redstone, was incredibly embarrassed by Cruise and said, "Okay, you're out of here." And Cruise's career was really shaky at that moment. But he bounced back. He got another Mission Impossible film and was welcomed back to Paramount, and everything was fine. But there was, when the South Park episode came out.
Oh, yes.
Trapped in the Closet.
So good.
Made fun of Tom Cruise. And a huge, wonderful episode that it's one of the best ever. Cruise was upset. He went ballistic and complained to Sumner Redstone because South Park was also a Paramount show. And there was an announcement the day after it aired that episode would never be seen again. It would not go into reruns. It would not be included in a DVD collection. It's dead.
Really?
Well,
I didn't know that. I've seen it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Tom Cruise got it canned for a brief moment. Until he continued acting wacky. And at that point, Sumner said, "You're out of here." And I was amazed when the DVD collection came out. I was walking through a store and I saw it on the shelf. And not only was it on the DVD, but there was a sticker on the front of the package saying, includes the award-winning Trapped in the Closet episode. So
That's
there you
awesome.
go.
I remember, like, South Park is almost like a future documentary sometimes of a spoof, because man, do they have their finger on the pulse of what's going on. What's crazy about that episode is that was the first time, I think I probably saw it when I was maybe 16 years old, something like that. It's the first time I'd ever heard of Scientology.
Yeah.
And I was like, this can't be real. They must have made this up, right? And then I Googled it. I was like, oh my God, like, people actually believe this.
You're not alone. I mean, that was a huge turning point for Scientology. That episode introduced the wackiness of Scientology to a whole generation of people. And really, it's a critical moment in Scientology's history.
Yeah. Now, I think today what would be good for a lot of people out there who aren't familiar with all the nooks and crannies of the history and where it stands right now, I think we can kind of work our way through that so that everyone comes up to speed, and interspliced within that is going to be your role and your career. Okay. You are someone who has run for public office down in Clearwater, literally on the basis of trying to get rid of the influence of Scientology within that town. So that's certainly something interesting to talk about. But my buddy Danny Jones has a big podcast down there in Madeira Beach. And so he grew up in Clearwater. He was very familiar with Scientology. So he's done some amazing podcasts over the years on Scientology, including with Mike Rinder, Aaron, who's big on YouTube, and some other guys. And so he had been telling me for a long time, I got to do one on this. But I didn't realize that there was literally someone who was down there, like on the city council, who was speaking up about this. I think that's a very brave thing to do, and we're going to get into why today. But before we go there, can we just start with Ron Hubbard and how this whole thing came together? He's such a fascinating figure. I don't know how there hasn't been like a major movie made about him at this point. I feel like someone would win an Oscar playing that.
There's an incredibly minor movie that was made about him by some of my former friends called The Prophet, which was a thinly veiled biography of Hubbard and the creation of Scientology. It has not really been seen by many people. It premiered in Clearwater, Florida, and ran for like 3 weeks straight in this one theater.
How long ago?
This was like 2001, I believe.
Oh, a while ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My friend Bob Minton, who is a retired international banker, had spent about $10 million of his own money trying to help people who had been abused by Scientology. And that was one of the things he did, was finance this film that a couple of our friends wrote and produced and directed. And they did a horrible job with it. So that one wasn't seen. But there's another film that is a great movie called The Master. If you haven't seen that,
Wait, Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Joaquin Phoenix?
That's based on Hubbard and Scientology. And there's so much of it that is identifiable. They didn't call it that, of course, and he's not called Hubbard, but there are several practices in it, when they're showing off, doing a locational where, you're trying to, if you're not fixed in this time and space, they'll say, look at that tree. Thank you. Look at that wall. Thank you. So there's things like that in the film that very closely mirror that.
I saw that like right when it came out.
Yeah.
That was like over a decade ago, I think.
Yeah, but
that's
the the awful and wonderful versions of the story.
Gotcha. So trying to remember though, was Philip Seymour Hoffman supposed to be Hubbard?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He was good to play Hubbard. Though.
He was perfect for it.
Because like I see this guy talk and I just see like Christian Bale, maybe Leo with some more weight. Well, both of them more weight. Or who's the Daniel Day-Lewis playing that? They could play the shit out of that guy because he's so fascinating. So he was basically a shitty science fiction writer.
Well, I mean, he was a very prolific science fiction writer. He wrote for pulp magazines back in the 30s and 40s. And these were cheap digest magazines that had stories of adventure, westerns, sci-fi, detectives. He wrote them all, but he's primarily known for his science fiction work. But he would crank out these stories at a penny a word.
Right.
And was one of the most prolific writers around. Not one of the best, but he was, selling these selling these stories constantly. And there are some times where he would have almost every story in a particular issue was his, but he would write them under different names. So there'd be pseudonyms for stories that are set in the Wild West, or he actually did French Legionnaire stories and all sorts of anything he could crank out, he would get paid for. But he did not get rich from that. At a penny a word, it's hard to make a living. And
he wrote a lot, though.
He wrote a lot, but still. Yeah. But that explains why Hubbard is so verbose as well. If you read any Scientology stuff, it is so overwritten because that's the style he's used to. You throw out a lot of words there, and maybe some of them make sense, right. But you just bury whatever you have in this language.
Do we know much about like his childhood and how like he even got to this? Like,
well, my God, he was the youngest Boy Scout ever.
He was?
Well, that's what he says.
Oh, okay.
He was a friend of some Indian tribe. They I made him an honorary Indian or something. Oh. I don't know. But there's this fanciful history that he came up with. He's just a kid with a wonderful flight of fancy, and was able to BS with the best of them. A terribly flawed individual. But he was a prolific writer, but not making money. He served in World War II. He actually got command of a ship for a couple of months before he was yanked off of that.
They gave that guy command of a ship?
They did.
I guess there were no psychiatric evaluations back then.
No, and and clearly he was nuts, and they noticed that he was nuts, and they said, you've been shelling this supposed Japanese submarine for 2 days now. You're wasting all of our ammunition on this. It's costing us a fortune. And it turned out to just be some magnetic ore in the water. It was no ship at all, but he was convinced he's saving the U.S. from this attack. So he was canned from that. And when he got out of service in World War II, he found a place to stay in South Pasadena. There was this colorful fella, who had a mansion. And he was renting out rooms to bohemian characters. Like he was looking for artists, writers, anybody who was like offbeat, that they could come and rent a room in his mansion. And Hubbard thought, well, this will be a wonderful thing to do. I'm not going to go back to my wife in the Midwest. I'm going to stay here in this mansion for a while. And this guy who owned this mansion was Jack Parsons, and he was a JPL original rocket scientist. He was a fellow who had, a lot of stuff going for him. One thing he had going for him was that he was a Satanist.
He worshiped the devil.
Yeah, he was a follower of Anton LaVey, I think. But he was actually doing these satanic rituals.
That's nice.
That Hubbard joined in on. And they were doing these black magic rituals with Jack Parsons' girlfriend. they would both be having sex with her as they were
Front and back, or
that I don't know. Sir. I wasn't there.
Okay.
I just know that they're
I
they're getting
expected
it on
you to
with
know
her.
that. You know?
Yeah, they're doing their little chants and they're trying to create the moon child.
If you got a video of that, we'll take it.
Well, thankfully I don't. But they were trying to create, the spawn of Satan, essentially.
Okay.
And Jack Parsons wrote to Anton LaVey. I think that's the right person I'm thinking of, and said, "Hey, we're working on creating a moonchild." And this guy went, "Oh God, these idiots."
Guys, if you're still watching this video and you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please take 2 seconds and go hit it right now. Thank you.
So Hubbard actually spent a few years there, and then made off with Jack Parsons' girlfriend and his money. He told Parsons, "Hey, listen, I'm going to go to the East Coast, and we'll buy some ships, and we'll sail them back here, and we'll sell them for a profit. It'll be wonderful. I'm taking your girlfriend with me." And so he got the money, got there, and they never brought the ships back. At least,
The girl.
Yeah. At least not at first. This is a type of wonderful, reputable fella that Hubbard is. And that's one of the most fascinating aspects of his life, and the most unorthodox, the most unbelievable aspects of it. So I usually don't even talk about it because people think, "Oh, come on, you're going overboard now." But Scientology had to admit that this happened. And their cover story, when this was uncovered, I think in the 60s.
Oh, a while ago.
Yeah, they said, Hubbard was sent in by the CIA to break up this black magic cult. Oh, yeah, that's what happened. Right.
Yeah.
Heroic Hubbard.
Bustamante about that one.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a really fascinating but bizarre period of his life, but almost every aspect of his life is bizarre.
Was the girl he brought back Mary Sue?
No,
it was different.
Mary Sue was the third wife. This was the second wife.
Okay.
Polly, I think, was his first wife, and then this gal, and I can't think of her name right now. This gal was the second, and then Mary Sue was the third. And there's this great interview done in 1964, I think, called The Shrinking World of L. Ron Hubbard. And I put this online decades ago, and I heard from the guy who actually made this episode of a documentary series for British TV. And he contacted me and explained how he just went up to Hubbard's ship, which was docked in a port there. He just went up there in the middle of the night and said, "Hi, I'm interested in doing an interview." And he had his equipment there. And Hubbard, for some reason, said, "Yes, that would be a wonderful thing to do. Let's do that right now."
It's a pretty good Hubbard.
Oh, yeah. So they sat down, and this guy's grilling Hubbard. One of my favorite moments is when he talks about Hubbard's marriages, and he asked Hubbard, "What about your second wife?" And he goes, "I never had a second wife." Really?
Total lie.
Well, I mean, if you had only two wives, your second wife would have been Mary Sue, the person you were talking about. But clearly, he's going, "Oh, I never had a second wife." Okay, he just didn't want to mention this gal who, well, it was a massive story in itself. Look this up. Go and look up L. Ron Hubbard's life, because it's amazing. He tried to have her committed to an insane asylum.
He's also a wife beater and stuff too, right?
Yeah, that was his first wife. And this is about as flawed a human being as you could ever encounter. And he's got the secret to how you can be a perfect human being. It never worked on him. But all of these courses are to help you become not just Homo sapiens. He wants you to become Homo novus, new man, able to control matter, energy, space, and time through Hubbard's Scientology techniques. And this guy his life was in a complete mess, and he found himself hiding out in the desert for the last 10 years of his life or so. When his wife, Mary Sue, went to prison for all these covert activities that they were doing against the U.S. government and against Clearwater. We can go into that.
We will.
I'm bouncing all over the place.
This is fine. You're just giving the overview. This is fine.
Yeah.
We'll come back.
So, this is a guy who let his wife take the fall for him, and he hid out in the desert because he didn't want to go to prison himself.
He also he sailed around the world to run from the U.S. government, basically, right?
Yeah. That was, starting in the early 60s. He got in trouble here in the U.S. The FDA raided their headquarters and seized all of their e-meters and said, you're practicing medicine without a license. And so he got in trouble with that. And they forced him to put a disclaimer on every e-meter that's still on there. If you look at the back of the e-meter, it says, this is a religious artifact. And, it's insane. But they still will say, yeah, we can cure ailments. They just try to pretend to the authorities that, oh, no, we don't do that. Right. But you talk to any Scientologist and they'll tell you, oh, yeah, it cured my mom's arthritis. It cured this, it cured that.
Science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Hubbard said in Dianetics that you can cure the common cold, you can improve your eyesight, you can do, everything can be cured with.
When did he write Dianetics? That was a book that, we'll explain it, but it later became the basis for what he then transformed into Scientology itself.
Yeah, that was 1950 when it came out as a book. It was first an article in one of those pulp magazines, one of the science fiction magazines. And then the book came out and boom, it was a huge success. It was like the hula hoop there for a brief period. And this was because it was psychotherapy for the common man. At that point in the late 40s, there was massive interest after World War II in psychiatry. But it was something that most people didn't have access to or couldn't afford. If you look at the movies at that point, Hitchcock made a film called Spellbound, which was all about a psychiatrist. And there's a whole lot of movies that deal with this at the time. So it was something that the public was fascinated by. So Dianetics, Hubbard says, you can sit down with a friend and this book, and you can audit each other. Auditing is their form of therapy.
Yep.
So you can, essentially get your therapy session for the price of a paperback. And that was a huge bestseller. And then he started doing lectures. And for a couple of years, he was raking in some dough for the first time in his life. And it was sweet. Except he always got in trouble with his investors. And who
were his investors?
He would have these people that read Dianetics and said, wow, this is great. You know what we need to do? Set up a foundation for you here. And then Hubbard would run off with the money and go to another city. So he went to Phoenix at one point and set up shop there. And he lost the copyright to Dianetics in like 1952, I think. It went over to one of the guys who put the money into it. So Hubbard then had to sit down and create something else. And that's when he created Scientology, which was, I think, 1953 when that was established officially. And there's a wire, a telegram that he sent to one of his people saying, how's everything coming on the religion angle?
On the angle.
Yeah, if we can get this approved, I know I can make it stick. I mean, it's right there in writing. This is a religion angle. But he got it and he made it stick.
It seems like the guy, I mean, obviously he was narcissistic out of his mind. Obviously and I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm just giving some basic ones here. Obviously he was bipolar. Did have a brain up there. And what it seems to me is that, sort of like you said a few minutes ago, he was maybe actually somewhat consciously aware of all his own internal struggles, that he felt like, almost like we may feel now when we go on to WebMD and hope they're going to tell us something that's going to cure something that's wrong with us at the time, just to get that confidence boost of like, oh yeah, I'll just drink more orange juice and this flu is going to fucking go away. It feels like he did that, but wrote a book about it. And just, I mean, from my perspective, and I haven't read Dianetics, but from the things I've heard about on podcasts and reading articles about it and documentaries, like, it's all made up. It's not, none of it's really based in scientific fact.
You know, he cobbled together a lot of things from, even back in the 1920s, there was some article about Dianetics, I think it was, or some, Scientology or Dianetics. The name was there prior. It was not exactly what Hubbard developed it into, but clearly it's a lot of stuff he's just pulling out of his ass.
Yes.
And not everything is bad. There are certainly some things that if you get into Scientology, you may be able to learn how to communicate better, for instance, the way Scientologists want you to communicate. Not necessarily the best way to communicate, but there are things you can pick up that in the lower levels are, they're not harmful, and you may learn something from them. But the problem is Hubbard had to keep writing new material, because he would promise that this is going to cure this problem. And people would take that course that he created and go, well, I'm not sure that it really did. And he said, but that's in the next course. So he'd sit down and write another course.
$1,000.
Yeah. So, anytime he needed to, he could sit down and say, well, I just came up with this new revelation, and here, you're going to have to buy this. And it worked. I mean, it made him a ton of money.
Do you think he actually believed it? Like, he started making money and actually, when he sat in bed at night, didn't say, I'm scamming all these sons of bitches. He actually thought it was real.
It's hard to say. It seems like he has to know that it was a scam. And his son, L. Ron Hubbard Jr., said that he and Dad would sit around with a case of beer at night and laugh at how they're, put one over on all these suckers. But then you get to the end of his life, and he's hiding in the desert, and he's sitting there with an e-meter, holding the cans and doing auditing on himself. So you think, well, you must believe it if you're sitting there trying to still create new courses to take and actually thinking that you're talking to your body Thetan. So, he may have just gone nuts by that point and decided, well, yeah, I guess, I think I'm really right. I think we are covered with body Thetans. I think, this was a piece of bullshit when I created it, but now I think there's something to it. Yeah.
I mean, you tell yourself something over and over again. Sometimes, psychologically is proven, it becomes true to you.
And when you got followers who are telling you, yes, this works, you go, well, yeah, maybe I am onto something. But, I still think he's a con man through and through.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But what is the Scientology stance on the afterlife / creation? Because, I mean, we can get into it today, but the word religion is very interesting because we tend to think about it one-dimensionally in society, but it can be a whole lot of different things. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. But the basis of this was supposed to, through the IRS, say, hey, we're a religious organization. Let's get tax exemption. So, yes, you're going up, in this case, like, trying to put yourself in the same class as Catholicism, Judaism, Islam, stuff like that. How did L. Ron Hubbard work in the religious creation aspect to what he did?
Well, it's a good question because Dianetics is the science of mental health. That's supposed to be, you should be able to scientifically prove that. And of course you can't.
Right.
But with Scientology, he created this this cosmology behind it, and kept adding through it over time. But essentially, we are godlike beings ourselves. We just forgot that we are. We are thetans. A thetan is kind of like a spirit, except if you're a Star Trek fan, the closest equivalent would be Q. If you watch Star Trek Next Generation, there's Q, this guy who can pop in and out and control matter, energy, space, and time, essentially, which is what Hubbard says we can all do. We just forgot how to do it. We used to be these spirits without bodies, and we would spend all of our time playing games. And we were so omniscient, so we could do anything we wanted, and it got dull. So we created meat bodies to make it a little more challenging.
Where did you say
we
he came
forgot.
up with this? Where did he say he came up with it?
He came up with, he looked around at his butt, and he reached in there, and there you go.
Seems like the truth.
Yes. He eventually got around to doing these upper levels called the operating thetan levels. Took a while for him to get that part of the bridge, but once you get there, then it really starts turning wacky. And all of these things were top secret until the internet came along. And some of this material started leaking, like OT3. Operating Thetan 3 is where you find out that 75 million years ago, Earth was known as Tigiak and was ruled over by the evil overlord Xenu, who, to solve the overpopulation problem in this sector of the galaxy, as Hubbard pronounced it, shoved us all into volcanoes and blew us up with hydrogen bombs far more powerful than those we have today. And that is the cause of all of our problems. We don't remember being blown up in that volcano, but we all were, which is why in round 64, I think it was, L. Ron Hubbard said, we're going to put an exploding volcano on the cover of Dianetics. And people will be standing in a checkout line and they'll see that. They'll remember something about being blown up in a volcano, and they'll impulsively buy that book and dig into it. So this is something that Scientology tried to keep secret and were able to for decades before the internet came along. And the internet was like Scientology's Waterloo. So all this information gets out there, and Scientology tries everything they can do to stop it in its tracks. They were raiding people's homes who leaked some of this material. One
What do you
guy
mean they're raiding? They're
They
private citizens.
Well, you would think, but they can go get a court order, as they did, and say that our copyrighted material is being put online, and a court will give them the warrant to go in and search this person's house. And luckily, I lived just a few blocks away from one of the guys whose home was raided, Dennis Ehrlich. And Dennis called up the local Fox affiliate, and they had a camera crew there. And they videotaped the entire incident where these two Scientology lawyers and executives were there to take this guy's computer and all of his files, and they were rifling through this, and it's all captured on video.
So they go in this case with the help of the government because they get an actual order,
Yeah.
and then they're able to actually carry out the raid in front of the government
Yeah,
officials.
they show up with an officer who says, well, they got a warrant, so we're just going to
Go
make
get
sure
your
that...
shit.
Yeah, and Dennis is just frantic and making phone calls, and so he had the entire raw tape of this thing, and I put it online back, around... Yeah, that's it.
This is it right here on the
yeah,
screen?
back in like 98 or 99, I think I put this online.
Okay. Should we put volume on this, Alessi? Do you hear what they're saying? Let's do it. Let's get there. Is it on?
All they trashed was my fucking civil rights. That's all they trashed. And that's what you're part of. And whether you like it or not, that's the truth, man. I would have expected a little more from you.
Whoa.
And these guys hate being on camera right now.
I'm sorry to say
Is that the Scientologist?
Yeah,
The captain?
These two
KFC
people
guy?
back. Well,
beyond what they were allowed to do.
one's got its back to us. I can't remember everyone's name. Warren McShane is one of the guys.
That's one right there?
Yeah.
Tapes obviously could be.
Yeah.
God, he looks like a spook.
Look at the warrant.
He's a Scientologist, too. Right?
I don't know what they.
Right? This guy's a Scientologist. I can tell by the 1,000-mile stare.
Ooh, what a burn.
You said he was an employee of your firm, and he wasn't connected with it.
Wait, who's the firm he's talking about? What does he mean, the
A
firm?
legal firm, I believe.
Got it. Okay.
One shot is what Eddie said to make sure that the
One
place
shot
wasn't
of
trash.
obviously his positions. If I took one shot of his
All right, let's pause it there. Alessi, we're going to put this video also down in the description. We'll have a section in the description called, like, all Scientology videos related to this, and they'll all be down there. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So they just go in and take stuff.
Yep, and they did this, I think, at 3 homes at the same time. And that's when my friend Bob Minton, retired international banker, got involved with this. They were working for a group called FactNet, and Scientology sued Dennis and the FactNet people for leaking this material. And Bob paid for the court case, and I think he gave Scientology a settlement to make sure that these guys didn't go to jail or anything. And they came to an agreement that they wouldn't disperse any of this material again, but it was out there in the wild, so it really didn't matter. All of that is public information now. Much to Scientology's chagrin, because once South Park was talking about the material, it was way too late.
Oh, yeah. So I think a real irony here with this religion is that if we go back to like the big 3 again, so like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, you got the Bible, you got the Torah, you got the Quran. Now, each of these churches has their secrets on the inside and whatever, but the basis of the story of their religion is public domain. They talk about it to everyone. You get all the Jehovah's Witnesses coming to your door knocking saying, hey, find Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So that's a common thing across religion. What it seems to me is that Scientology, all the basis of the religious aspect of it, they wanted none of that in the public domain. They didn't want anyone to even know what they believed.
Yeah, well, when you have a 2,000-year-old story of Jesus, that's in the public domain.
Yes.
Hubbard's writing could be copyrighted. And that's a way they were able to say, hey, I'm saying this is the cold historical fact of life, but it's copyrighted cold historical facts. And this is the insane way that the court system works. They... groups like Scientology are able to use the law to shield themselves as they continue to ruin people's lives and just commit the most awful, disgraceful actions against members and people who just try to speak out.
Well, when L. Ron Hubbard actually came up with the religion itself, Scientology, and put it to work, did he have, I mean, obviously their headquarters we know now is Clearwater and everything, but did he have specific areas and people that he wanted to target with this? And how long, like how quickly did it grow before he had to go on the lam around the world, which we'll get to as well?
Well, he wanted to target anyone who had money, but around 55 or 56, I think, he put out a hit list of celebrities. And he listed a few dozen people like Jack Benny, Ed Sullivan, Red Skelton, these people who were big names at the time and you have never heard of, I'm sure. And Hubbard said, any Scientologist who brings one of these people into the fold, oh my God, you're going to be treated royally. And none of them ever were suckered into the group. It wasn't until John Travolta that they had any success, and that was in the 70s. You know, that was the start of really the celebrity onslaught. As you know, they kept getting more and more of these celebrities in. Not, you know, most of them weren't major celebrities. There are very few of them. You had Travolta, Tom Cruise, but Tom Cruise really believes that Scientology is responsible for his success. You can see it in the video that he did.
A lot of these guys do.
Yeah. Because L. Ron Hubbard said that that's the case, you know. Yeah. And you are built to believe that anything that works in Scientology is L. Ron Hubbard's genius. And if it doesn't work, you did something wrong. So you put yourself in the mindset of saying, okay, well, I got to get my shit together. And once I do, this is going to be perfect. But Cruise really thinks that he's a successful, huge movie star because of Scientology, where in reality, Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise because he's Tom Cruise, not because of any Dianetics or any Scientology aspect at all. If all it took was for you to be a Scientologist, every actor or artist who joined Scientology should be at the level of Tom Cruise, and they're not.
Well, maybe
so you got John Travolta, but you have Joey Travolta, his brother, who nowhere.
No one
you
knows.
got Frank Stallone, I think, was a Scientologist for a while. You know, if Scientology really was the key to being a brilliant artist, well, all of these people would be successful.
But, you know, and we'll get into the full background of the audits and stuff like that soon. But you know how, like, there's a lot of people who are successful who have a clear routine, right? Not everyone, but some people, they're so rigorous about, this is my routine, this is my routine,
Sure.
This is what I do. I wake up at this time, I do this, I do that. And it helps, it almost puts their body into a pattern that allows them to then go on to cruise control while they work to then have success in what they do. Is it possible that some of the non-religious aspects, rather the self-help aspects of Scientology that aren't necessarily rooted in science, but is it possible that some of that involves mental rewiring that actually makes people, I don't want to use the woo-woo terms, but like manifest some things through their work to then happen that then they think like, oh my God, this is the only reason it happened because of that, because this works for me.
Well, I think you're right. It's not so much the religious aspects that are part of this. It's the methods that are used. It's the thoughts that are instilled in you that you are all powerful. You just have to unleash that. It gives you a confidence that perhaps you really aren't worthy of. But you can be bolder. You can go into an audition without so much fear because you know how to do this. So yeah, there are aspects of that. Let me give you an example from a different side of this, not showbiz, but Scientology has a lot of front groups that they use to get the message out there. Because if you just say, hey, we're Scientology and we believe you were blown up in a volcano, come in and find out about that. Instead, they have to do things like put together a marketing branch for the Hubbard management tech. And they'll do seminars to bring in professionals and show them how to make money in their business. And this is targeting especially things like people like dentists and chiropractors, these people who make a lot of money from their practice, but when they're going through their education, they don't learn how to run an office the way medical doctors apparently do. That's part of their education. So they found this niche market, and they hit up these dentists and chiropractors and say, oh, we'll show you how to make money. One of the things they instill in you is hard sell, because everything in Scientology is hard sales. But they'll explain, you need to get this patient, get them to prepay for all the work they're going to need done. Probably nothing right now needs to be done, but down the line they're going to need this. So have them prepay for that right now. So you're strong-arming your customers, and that works for a while until people get catch on to you, they start warning other people. In the meantime, Scientology has found a way to get their members working in the dentist office. So Scientology knows exactly how much money the dental practice is making, so they know how much they can bleed out of the dentist.
So it's like an intelligence mission. They go to their people, they're like, Donna, you look like you'd be a good hygienist. Hop on in there, kid. Like, that's pretty much what they're doing?
Well, people would run the office, essentially, and I interviewed a couple of married dentists in Chicago back in 2000 that explained this whole process. They came in because the husband went to one of these seminars and thought that was wonderful. They got involved in that. And then, of course, Scientology says, well, there are other aspects of your life. How's your relationship going? How's this? We can help you. Come on down to the church and we'll talk to you there. And in this case, the wife, when it turned into let's go to the Church of Scientology, she was going, no way, this is a cult. No, sir, I don't want any part of it. But the husband convinced her, let's give it a shot. She eventually got sucked in from that position. She became the true believer, and he started having doubts. And she would talk to the Scientologists, people in charge of their, auditing, and she would complain about her husband starting to have some doubts about Scientology, and the Scientologist would tell her, dump him. You've had millions of husbands before. You're going to have millions of husbands again. Dump them.
Oh, my God.
This is what Scientology believes. If somebody's going to have doubts, get rid of them because we want you to keep paying us money. We need to bleed you dry. If he's out, okay, just cut him off. But don't you have a negative thought about L. Ron Hubbard, for God's sakes.
Well, they also have like it feels like the mafia when you talk about them, because you'll hear about, for example, like Leah Remini. Am I saying that right?
Leah Remini.
Leah Remini. God damn it. I'm having a tough day. But Leah Remini, she's talked about it a bunch before, how she would get summoned to Clearwater. They'd say, you must come here. You must do an audit or whatever. And then she'd have to pay for it and everything. And then I think they would ask her to donate more to Scientology. They're basically like bilking her checks for the church, and she feels forced to do it. Why do you think more people, when they get summoned, from LA or from Sioux City, wherever they are, don't just say, nah, I can't do that right now?
Well, it depends how dedicated they are. I'm sure not everybody hops on the plane and comes down to Clearwater. But if you want to be a good Scientologist moving up the bridge, yeah, you're going to do everything you can to stay in the good graces, pay the fortune for the, each escalating tier of courses you're going to take. All the while, there is eternity waiting for you. Nothing may make sense as you're going along. There's always that next course that's going to make sense. And by the time you're an OT8, oh my God, those people are the most amazing people on the planet.
They know everything.
These OT8s, and you want to be that too, don't you? And people who are lower on the rung in Scientology do look at OT8s as these remarkable beings, powerful beings, and I could be just like that. But these powerful beings are messes as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe now would be a good time to actually define the process, because we keep on talking about this and everything. But when you first agree to go to a Scientology center to talk about maybe joining the religion, what happens?
Well, normally you will be recruited. There are several ways that you could bump into Scientology. You can be walking down the street and have somebody ask you to take a personality test. For many years, that was one way they would do this, and they call that body routing. You stand outside. If you look on YouTube now, there's a testing center on Hollywood Boulevard where a lot of TikTok people have been taking their cameras and kind of interfering and pestering the guys who are doing the body routing.
Shout out TikTokers.
Yeah, and so they're now on YouTube as well. And Ron, my friend Aaron, went out there a couple of weeks ago to join them, and he got there and got assaulted, and they arrested him.
Oh, well.
And this other guy.
All right, we're going to play one real quick. Unless you just pulled it up.
He's trying to lie to you.
It's not lying.
No, it is.
All the time. That's you.
Yeah. He is absolutely, it's a personality test, right? He takes that information to try to then recruit you into Scientology. The whole goal is he's going to ask you to buy the book, and he's going to ask you to take a seminar for $200 and $85 for the book. They get this. See, they ask you that personality test. It's not scientific. It's owned by Scientology. They created it to ask 200 questions about yourself, and then they use that information against you to recruit you. Listen to them. Es una secta. Es una secta. That's right. Let them know. Right, it's no good. It's a personality test. They would have had you in there for 2 hours, and then, you know what, you'd be separated from your family sooner or later. You don't have anything to do with that. You don't have anything to do. You thought you had them, huh, Sebastian? You worked on them hard, huh? That's right. That's right.
So it's pretty remarkable. You got people out there every day now trying to warn people away from going in to take the personality test. And it's this, I think it's like 200 questions. I took it years ago. And there's wacky things on it, like, have you ever, and no, that's not that one. Because I'm thinking now about the sec check. I was about to say, have you ever enslaved a planet? That's part of the security check. That's not.
They ask you that.
Yeah. Have you ever had a negative thought about Ron Hubbard? If you have, well, boy, you're in big trouble. And that's when
you need help.
That's when they haul you in and make you do the sec check that you have to pay for. And so it can be, I think Leah spent like $40,000 to be sec checked on her way out.
$40,000.
Yeah.
Are they hooking you up to a fucking golden pool?
No. You just got your little soup cans attached to an e-meter, and they're grilling you about whatever horrible thing you did to harm Scientology.
For $40,000.
Yeah. You get the honor of paying for that.
Wow. I love how they do that. They change the psychology. You're so lucky to do this. You get to give us your money.
You have to go, once you get to the upper levels, I think OT7 is where this starts, where every 6 months you have to go in and pay for a sec check. And in this case, where I'm talking about Leah now being sec checked at the end, it was because she asked questions about David Miscavige's wife not being at Tom Cruise's.
Shelly.
Yeah, Shelly Miscavige was not at Tom Cruise's wedding. And for that, she was hauled in and grilled for months and forced to spend a money to pay for that delightful treatment.
Grilled for months.
Yeah.
Like, is she allowed to
I think
leave
she was-
the compound?
Well, yeah, they're staying at the Fort Harrison Hotel, and your world becomes centered around the Scientology properties there when you come to Clearwater, and this is where Clearwater is where all the upper levels are given. You can't do OT3 and up anywhere else. If you want to do the upper levels, you have to come and pay in Clearwater directly. Lower levels you can do at smaller orgs around the world. But at a certain point, at a certain price point, they say you have to come to us. And once you come to Clearwater, they force you to pay to stay in their hotel, and then they want you to prepay for all of your meals at their property. And you unlike signing in at any hotel, here you're led from one registrar to another registrar. These are the salespeople, and they say, now you have to pay for this, and now you have to pay for that.
Hey guys, if you have a second, please be sure to share this episode around on social media and with your friends, whether it's Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, doesn't matter. It's all a huge help. It gets new eyeballs on the show, and it allows us to grow and survive. So thank you to all of you who have already been doing that, and thank you to all of you who are going to do so now.
Yeah, so
and people they don't have the red flags go up during this?
They feel that they're getting something from it.
All right, so they go in, though, they take the personality test. How soon after that can they or do they become an actual Scientologist? And what happens? Like, are you like knighted or some shit? Like,
for the raw meat who get sucked in off the street. That's what they call them.
I like
people.
that. Fresh meat, raw meat, yeah.
Yeah. So once you go in and take the personality test, they're going to say, oh, look at these troubling. So you're having problems with this area of your life? Oh, well, we can help you with that. And they'll sign you up for generally the communication course, which I think is like $40. And they teach you how to communicate the way a Scientologist does. There's a certain pattern, there's arc triangle, there's where you say something, then the other person has to respond to it to acknowledge that they've heard that, and you can move forward. This is an earth-shattering revelation of L. Ron Hubbard, how to communicate. At the end of every course, you are forced to sit down and write up your win. What you got from the course. And this is one of the insidious control issues that Hubbard, the evil genius Hubbard, came up with. Is once they get you off the street there, you're put onto this mind control factory conveyor belt. And so at the end of the course, you sit down and you're forced to think about, what did I get from it? Well, I guess I learned how to communicate better by this. So they have all of those things in a file. So if you ever have doubts, they pull out the folder and they go, well, look at all the wins you've had. You don't want to give up now. You're making so much wonderful progress. All of these insidious little things that become part of channeling you farther and farther into it. And, they'll want you to buy a set of books. If you may be able to find the orientation video online. There's a really lousy quality version of it that somebody videotaped off of a movie screen in one of the Scientology centers. It's an amazing film, and I saw in their celebrity center in L.A. Back in 2000.
Which one? This one?
Yes, that would be it.
All right, let me turn on. Ooh. What is that?
It is pretty amazing. Right now you're in the cosmos. You're seeing meteors kind of hurtling towards you with
Ron
this
Hubbard
ethereal music. This is, I think, 20 minutes long, and it says nothing essentially except we're tax exempt.
Ooh,
and we're a real religion.
Love that.
But along the way, you see this great host who is going to walk you through the org and tell you, well, let's go over and talk to Susie in the library. And she'll say, well, you need to buy this book and this book and this book and this book and this book.
God, it's so corny. Everything all the videos they do they have video editors who are Scientologists, I assume? They're not letting outsiders do this.
Yeah, no, they have in-house, and the in-house work has gotten so much better. You can see in this video how crappy they used to be.
Oh my God, I still think it's crappy. All due
Just
respect,
because, but now there's a polished gleam to them. So, Larry, the host here, you're going to see on camera, his name is Larry. I can't think of his last name right. Larry Anderson, I think. And he blew. He's no longer a Scientologist, so they had to stop showing this particular video. That's a problem that Scientology has. When somebody in one of these videos blows, well, then they have to reshoot the damn thing.
Oh, yeah.
This is Sage Hill Manor, headquarters in the United Kingdom, and once Ron's home. This is the founding church in Washington, D.C. This is the International Ecclesiastic Management Center. This is the upper level and combined organizations in Los Angeles.
It feels like a South Park episode.
This is Celebrity Center International in Hollywood.
This is Celebrity
This is the
International.
Scientology College in England. And this is the Free Winds.
Where you get a free cruise to spend $7,000.
In fact, there are thousands of Dianetics and Scientology organizations, missions, and groups spanning the globe on every continent in over 100 countries of Earth. And millions of Scientologists to be your friends and help you help yourself and others. Scientology was designed for you,
Larry.
and all that you hold dear. Religion is as old as man. Man has believed far longer that he was a spirit than a piece of mud.
Now this is going to go on and on and on.
Okay, all right, let's cut it there.
What you can get a sense here of, Larry is this is wonderful, and let's find out more about this and that and the other thing. And if you jump to the end, the last couple of minutes of it is when it turns brilliant. And I was
sarcasm? Do I detect sarcasm?
Oh no, I'd love this. This is like one of my favorite things. I saw this in the screening room, really nice little screening room at the Celebrity Center in L.A. And I had a Scientologist friend who invited me there. And I said, sure, I'll come and see the place. This was as I was just starting to learn about it. And we got to a certain point here where the lights come down on Larry and the music gets ominous, and suddenly the wonderful tone that he had before turns bleak and dark. And so if we can watch this, I was laughing hysterically at this turn, and she's slapping me on my thigh going, stop it.
This is like the last 2 minutes, you said?
Yeah, you might want to roll back just a little bit more. This is worth watching.
Right there? Is that good?
A little farther in. You're gonna no. I'm sorry, the other way, toward the end.
Right.
Toward the end.
Okay, go to last 2 minutes.
You want to see? Yeah. There's just start around there.
Okay.
When he's in front of that door.
Done.
Such a thing occurs every few hundred or 1,000 years. Some genius rises, and man takes a new step toward a better life.
Who the hell are
A
those
better
people?
culture. There is a difference with Dianetics and Scientology.
They're the smart
It
people
has
who are
never
joining
happened before
Scientology.
in all the countless years of time. In this brief moment, we have our temporary chance for handling and continuing life. Clouds loom over this culture and planet. In this short interval, in this one place, we have our freedom before us. We can arise above the decay, the final flash that will inevitably extinguish this planet. It is not our mission to save it. It is our mission to free you. You are an immortal being. Your life will not halt because this planet halts. You can go on. Now, we could play this very low key, we could sort of giggle and say, we can help you a little to lead a slightly happier life. Yes, we could say that, stating that if you cooperated, we could make you more cheerful. But that would be like offering someone a diamond and saying it was glass.
What?
Right this instant, you are at the threshold of your next trillion years.
Trillion.
You will live it in shivering, agonized darkness, or you will live it triumphantly in the light. The choice is yours, not ours. If you this minute say, I will, for better or for worse, go on in Scientology, you will open the door to your own future. If you say otherwise, you slam tomorrow shut in your own face. I'm sorry, but that's the way it really is.
Sucks to suck.
We are not making any claims for Dianetics and Scientology. It is you who, when you've experienced what can be, are the one that will make the claims. What is true for you. In man's past barbaric ologies and religions, they told you that you were better, but you had to believe them. You had to have faith there was a possible recovery for you, that there were various gods and that heaven waits. And you were told by some that you were a one-life animal, and by others that hell yawned if you dared to sin. You had to believe them, or you got burned at the stake, or shot, or flunked. You don't have to believe us, or even trust us. If you work with Scientology, you will find out for yourself. What's true is what is true for you. You have a friend. He worked for half a century in a violent and often unkind world to open the gate for you.
L. Ron.
We are here to help you put
Shout
yourself
out
on
L.
the track
Ron.
that leads up. If you fall off, we'll try to help put you back on. But it is up to you. It is how you use it that counts. For you are the one that counts. If you leave this room after seeing this film and walk out and never mention Scientology again,
We won't kill
you
you.
are perfectly free to do so. It would be stupid, but you can do it. You can also dive off a bridge or blow your brains out. That is your choice. If you don't walk out that way, if you continue with Scientology, we will be very happy with you. And you will be very happy with you. You will have proven that you are a friend of yours. We here in this org are really just doormen to the great highway found and built by Ron into a better future.
All right, cut that. That's
Yeah,
what
that's
it
fine.
said. That's,
This is my
that's
favorite
some
part.
trippy
Is
shit.
oh, sure, you could walk out and never say Scientology again. Better be stupid. You might as well just blow your brains out.
Jump off a bridge.
Yeah.
Wow. Not mincing words.
Yes. Now,
just like-
how do you go in and watch that and go, oh yeah, I'd like
Seems
to
normal.
be part of that?
Yeah. Yeah, like it that's what I can't, maybe it's just because my baptism of fire to this was a South Park episode, so that roots me in that. But I don't know how you take it seriously. I understand they may actually tell you some things that like, oh, that's gonna help me. It's gonna sell me money, confidence, and love. Right? It's gonna sell me improvements in those places. I think you and I talked about that on the phone last week before you came here. But all the other shit they put around it is like it's as if a Ponzi scheme were a religion.
Well, yeah.
That's what it is.
Mhm.
It's crazy.
Yep. And they don't show this video anymore.
I'm going to fix this while you're talking. Keep going.
Okay, they've gotten better with their propaganda. At this point, it was there's a whole bunch of Scientology material that was generated that's just so over the top nuts.
Right.
There's an audio tape called "Can We Ever Be Friends?" I think is the name of it, and it was played as a piece of evidence in a court case, and I put that online. I figured I can get away with playing this whole thing because it was played in a court. But it's a tape that you're supposed to give to your parents or other loved ones when you're a Scientologist, and they're saying that Scientology is evil or sucks. They'll say, "Listen to this tape, Mom. Listen to this tape, Dad," and it is this over-the-top nonsense where you go, "Oh my God, I'd worry even more about my kids if you played this for me." So do a search for that sometime and listen to it. It's Can We Ever Be Friends?
Can we ever be friends? All right.
You don't have to listen to it.
Yeah. We'll try to find that afterwards. Yeah. But when L. Ron, I want to go back to part of the origin here, because what we've been talking about sporadically today is the pressure they're able to exert. And we haven't even got into like how they went to war with the IRS, all that. But, you know, they wanted, from the onset of this religion, they wanted to shout down anyone who did anything that they did not approve of, whether that be share information about Scientology that's not supposed to be shared, or just speak out against it. And obviously Mike Rinder used to be, when he was in Scientology, he was literally in charge of doing this and pressuring people. But L. Ron Hubbard, you had mentioned his wife ended up taking the fall and going to prison. Before he went on the, whatever it is, cruise ship journey around the world to run from the U.S. government, what exactly happened there, and what actions did he take? It was literally in like a covert manner to pressure the government?
Yeah, and I seem to have gone off on a tangent on a question that you asked me earlier about him being in trouble with governments around the world. After the FDA raid here, he said, I'm going to go over to England, and I'm going to set up shop there in a castle, or a mansion rather, St. Hill. And he ran it from there for several years until he was kicked out of England.
Nice.
And at that point, he said, I'm buying a ship, and we're going to run this from international waters where these pesky governments will leave me alone. So he started the Sea Org, and the most dedicated followers would join him on board the ship. And
How big
they
a
set
ship?
sail. Yeah, well, it was a pretty big ship. It was I think a cattle ship at one point. That
Fitting.
Yeah, and these people who had no experience at all of sailing or doing any of this work, he convinced them. Listen, you were a sailor billions of times before. Just remember what it was like when you were manning a ship at that point. And he would give them some basic directions on how to do things. So you got this motley crew of young people, normally in their 20s, traveling around the world with him as he continues to create more and more upper-level courses to take. He did that for 10 years. And he finally decided, I'd like to come back to dry land. And there were missions sent out to find a place for him to land. And there were two cities that were options, Clearwater and I forget the name of the other place, another southern city, I believe. And Clearwater won because it had just the properties that they needed at a reasonable price. And, it didn't hurt that the word clear is in the name of Clearwater. Clear is one of the first states you reach on the bridge to total freedom. When you're clear, you've gotten rid of all your negative thoughts from your unconscious mind, or your reactive mind, as they call it. And then you're able to move forward to do the OT levels. So Hubbard snuck into town in Clearwater, and he very quickly started covert actions against Clearwater, and also at the same time against the U.S. government. Project Normandy was the operation in Clearwater, where he said, get people in the mayor's office, get people in the newspaper, get people in this, that, and the other thing, and we're going to take over every aspect of this. We want to make sure we know who is against us and take actions against it. After about a month of them being in town under this phony name of the Southern Land exactly what United Churches, Southern Land Corporation, something like that. Yeah. After about a month, Mayor Gabe Casares had been asking questions, and they discovered that it was really Scientology. And Gabe was like, "Wait a minute! What? We got people here that have billy clubs they're carrying on them. There's security guards at the top of the Fort Harrison Hotel. There's this very ominous presence there. What the hell is going on?"
How big was Scientology by this time? Like approximately, do we know how many members?
Well, I mean, they'll say 10 million, but really,
Right.
It was not a huge thing. But they were making enough money though to buy their ships and continue their operation. Now I think they're down to like 20 to 30,000 people worldwide. So they come into town. Project Normandy happens. They run covert operations against Gabe Casares, the mayor.
When you say covert operations, like just literally trying to send people in there to curry favor, or also hiring like private investigators?
Dirty tricks. Dirty tricks. The FBI raided Scientology's headquarters in L.A. and Washington, D.C., I think around 78. They snuck into town in 75, and then the FBI raids happened, and Scientology at that point was putting everything down in writing. Every nasty step of all these operations they were doing. Against Gabe, they set him up on a hit-and-run accident. He was up in Washington, D.C. for some legislative thing, and there was a Clearwater resident with him in the car, and they were driving down a street in Washington, D.C., and suddenly there was somebody who walked in front of the car and got hit.
Whoa.
And it turned out that they had set this whole thing up. This woman convinced Gabe to go down the street. And this guy walked out in front of the car, all in writing, step by step, how we're going to do this. They're trying to ruin his political career because he was going to run for, I think, Senate or Congress. And he did, but he lost because of all of this nonsense that was going on. That was just one of the things. They had all sorts of things where, they would have girls calling up Gabe's phone number at home and talk to his wife and say, "Is Gabe there? Oh, I love that Gabe." Just things to kind of ruin his life. At the same time, they had operations against Paulette Cooper, the first woman to write one of the early books about Scientology, critical of Scientology.
Oh.
They set her up on bomb threats. They forged these bomb threats against Henry Kissinger.
Wait, they didn't like Kissinger? He was coming out against them?
Oh, well, supposedly she didn't like Kissinger.
Oh, right.
She was.
It took a minute to go upstairs. Sorry.
Yeah. So they and they were framing her, and this almost ruined her life. I mean, it took it cost all of her money. She was a journalist who had a really solid career going, and suddenly she was in the newspapers as this insane woman trying to blow up Henry Kissinger, and she didn't know what the hell was going on.
The world.
Yeah, she had no idea what was happening here, but her life was in ruins. She actually said, "Listen, give me what is the truth serum? That shoot me up with this stuff and put me on a lie detector." And I did not do any of this. Well, when the FBI raid was uncovered and they found all of this documentation about what they did to her, she was finally cleared. In the meantime, before that happened, she had a roommate who came to live with her, and he was the only person that she could turn to, and she'd be crying on his shoulder about how horrible this was. he would go up on the roof and send messages back to Scientology saying, "Isn't this great? She's either going to be committed to an asylum or she's going to kill herself. It's working.
So
it's
he
working."
was a Scientologist.
He was a Scientologist who sent in there.
Oh my God.
Oh, and Gabe hired an attorney to sue Scientology after it was uncovered what they did to him. And there was this attorney at his golf club who said, "Hey, you ought to hire me." And Gabe did. And this guy botched the case. Turned out that he was a Scientologist brought in from another state specifically to befriend Gabe and Gabe's wife and get hired so he could screw this up. So your oath, whatever oath you take to follow the law, is superseded by your oath to L. Ron Hubbard.
God, it's so weird.
And that is, I mean, it is the type of thing where, you know, the greatest good is protecting Scientology. You get in this mindset that whatever you do, there's a good reason for it, because we got to protect the only possible salvation for the planet. If Scientology goes, this planet is doomed. And Scientologists get in thinking they're saving the planet. Really do.
So that gets beat into them.
Yeah. You know, the world, those of us out here who are lowly
The
wogs.
what world?
W-O-G. It's a slur. In England, it's used against black people. It was a colonial thing in India. And L. Ron Hubbard, his father was a career military guy. So L. Ron Hubbard visited India as a kid and China. And he wrote down in a little notebook his thoughts about all these places. And, for instance, in China, he said, the only problem with China is all the... and in India, the British who were ruling the country, they would have the locals come and ask for some help with things. And between themselves, they would be saying, "Oh, what do the locals want today?" Worthy Oriental Gentleman is one abbreviation that's sometimes used for that. But the WOG world is something that Scientologists are told about. You know, the WOG world is filled with insanity and war. The only hope we have for changing things on this planet and saving it is to get everybody in Scientology. So that's the big push.
Is there a common moment, like among, we'll talk, I'm sure, about a lot of these people over the years who have disaffected from Scientology. We've already mentioned some. But in doing an autopsy of that, with all these different people who had their own different experiences leading them eventually out of the church, do they all talk about some sort of crowning moment where they cross the Rubicon and suddenly believe? And is it similar for all these people?
Usually it's because some pressure is put on you that makes you go, wait a minute, this isn't fair. It could be that you're sent to the RPF, the Rehabilitation Project Force. You could get sent to the RPF for something as little as making a joke about Scientology or saying something about L. Ron Hubbard that they didn't like. The RPF is where you work half the day in hard labor, and then the other half of the day you're studying L. Ron Hubbard's writings. And you're taken away from your family members. You know, if you're husband or wife, you'll be separated. You can't talk to anyone unless talked to first. And people can be on the RPF for months or years. And that was the case for like Mike Rinder. And you come to a breaking point at some point where you just say, this is insane. I gotta get out of here. Or it can be that your relationship is ruined if you start to have doubts and your partner writes up a knowledge report and sends it into the Scientology officials and saying, my husband just said this. That gets them in trouble and puts them on the RPF. People's marriages are split up if they're both members of the Sea Org, and David Miscavige is upset with somebody. He'll ship, one of the couple, over to Australia or some other far distant land, and they'll be separated for years.
Are there people, though, in those situations who have said, fuck you, and just left, though?
Yeah.
And then nothing happens to them?
Eventually, yeah.
Eventually.
Once this hardship is to a point where they just can't take it anymore, they'll try to escape, as many people have. Leah Remini's assistant now. She was a casting director for Scientology videos and worked up at their desert compound in Hemet, California. She would be hiring actors who were non-Scientologists, and they would come and do these little orientation type of videos because they have their film studio there in the desert compound.
They would let non-Scientologists do that?
Yeah. Well, it used to be pretty much all Scientologists, but the problem there is when they fled Scientology, then they have to go and reshoot it. So if you get some WOG actors who are just coming in and doing a script about evil psychs or whatever, they're just happy to get a job and be paid a little bit of money for, these are not high caliber actors for the most part.
Yeah. Something tells me they're not winning Oscars.
Yeah. So anyway, this woman who's the casting director had to flee. And there was a shoot one day, and she crawled into the trunk of one of the actors' cars and waited until he drove home to L.A., a 2-hour ride. She's huddled in that trunk all the way back to L.A. He finally pulls up to his house, and she's pounding on the trunk, and the guy opens it up and goes, "What the hell? What do you do, huh?" And at that point, you just say, "I'm a Scientologist." And then people go, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." That happens so often.
Oh, my God, man.
You get to that point where you just can't take it anymore. And those folks who flee, they can actually be chased across country. One of the guys I interviewed was the head of security at that desert compound. And he talked about how he developed these blow drills. When you leave Scientology without permission, they say you've blown. And then they now have this set situation where they know every Sea Org member, they know their families and friends, they have the contact information for everybody, they know where these people live. So if somebody flees, they go, well, here's places he may be going, and they'll send Scientologists across the country to kind of sweep the place and find them and drag them back.
Like forcibly?
Forcibly? Well, yeah, they'll convince them it's in their best interest. You don't want to lose your friends with. They convince them. It's not often that they throw them in a van and lock them in there and tie them up. But this is all the prison of the mind that you've got going on there.
Okay.
If they can convince you that you have to come back and route out properly, you can't just blow because they're worried you might go to the press, you might say horrible things about them. So they grill you with the e-meter, and they're finding out, have you ever had a negative thought about Hubbard? Have you ever had a negative thought about David Miscavige? What have you done to harm Scientology?
Can you explain the e-meter to people?
The e-meter is this little lie detector type of device. You hold on to two metal cans. They're originally soup cans. They run a little electric current through you. And on the meter itself, there's a little needle that moves. And so as you're talking, the needle will move back and forth. And the professional auditors who study this machine, they can tell when you're lying. They can tell when there's something wrong.
And they won't. I read that they won't update this technology because it was crafted by the hand of Hubbard.
Well, it gets updated in many ways,
but they won't change. Like they won't say that this tech. Like we had years ago we had the landline phone, right?
Yeah.
Well, now we have iPhones. It's still a phone,
Right.
but it's a huge upgrade. Like, they don't do that. They stay with the landline. They just change the tech.
There are there's yes and no. The e-meters essentially still work the same way. It's an electric galvanometer. It's just measuring your skin moisture, whatever. But they think, it's a key to your eternal mind, and we know what you're thinking.
Right.
But that, Scientologists believe that it will, point out when they're not being truthful, and that can get them in a lot of trouble. And so that's why people put the blinders on when you're in Scientology. You don't want something negative to pop up on the meter that's going to cause you nothing but trouble and nothing but money coming out of your pockets if you're a public member. So you force yourself to not have a negative thought. You put those blinders on yourself and refuse to read anything negative about Scientology. Watch any program that it might be an expose. You wouldn't think of
They
watching
rewire
that.
your brain. Yeah.
So at any rate,
When I picture these people you talk about, though, like when they go across state lines to go tell someone it's in their best interest to come back, I don't know if this is a good way to picture it, but I just can't help but doing it. I picture all the actors inside the world of the Truman Show, where they're like, Truman, no, you need to go back there.
Yeah.
And they all know, like,
it's very
this
much
whole
like
joke is on him. But, like that thing on their face that's so fake, like, it's almost like, whoop, robot, turn into it. That's how I picture these people.
Yeah. Well, you're taking on the valence of L. Ron Hubbard. You're behaving exactly the way he wants a Scientologist to behave. You find yourself falling into that because you're surrounded by people who buy into it all, and all are behaving that way, and so you fit in. It's going to cause you nothing but trouble if you don't fit in, and you want to be able to control matter, energy, space, and time at the end of this. So you put up with a lot of misery because it's going to be incredible when you are able to control matter, energy, space, and time. So it's bizarre, but there you go.
Do they ever recruit people who are active practitioners of another religion?
Oh, sure. They'll tell you.
Do they convert them?
Well, they'll tell you that it's completely compatible with any other religion.
What?
That is the party line. Sure, you can be a Christian and a Scientologist. You can be Jewish and a Scientologist. That's completely compatible. Of course, it's not.
No.
And believe me, I'm not coming here from a faith perspective. I just think this is just morally bankrupt, as everything is in Scientology. If you are saying, well, it's completely compatible with Christianity, and then you find out L. Ron Hubbard said there was no Christ, there's an audio tape on that. You can pull that up online. L. Ron Hubbard, there was no Christ. He says that some 2,000 years ago, some maniacs stumbled upon part of L. Ron Hubbard's tech, R6, and misinterpreted it. The man on the cross is every man.
Oh, no.
So how you say that that's compatible with Christianity, I don't know.
All right, here we go. We have the video. Let me turn this on. I say this every time. I got to have you logged into mine, Alessi, so that you can have here we go.
Every man has been shown to have been crucified, so don't think that it's an accident that this crucifixion, they found out that this applied. Somebody, somewhere on this planet, back about 600 BC, found some pieces of R6. And I don't know how they found it, either by watching Mad Men or something, but since that time they have used it, and it became what is known as Christianity. The man on the cross. There was no Christ.
There you go.
But the man on the cross is shown as every man. So, of course, each person seeing a crucified man has an immediate feeling of sympathy for this man. Therefore, you get many PCs who says they are Christ. Now, there's two reasons for that. One is the Roman Empire was prone to crucify people. So a person can have been crucified. But in R6, he is shown as crucified.
Wow.
Now, is that compatible with Christianity?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. But they don't hesitate to say, "Oh yeah, sure." But what they really mean is, your wallet is compatible with Scientology. So, sure, it's compatible. Come on, pay for another course.
The average Scientologist, how much, I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this, but, I think about like taxes, right? You pay in a tax bracket or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on how much income you make, that's the amount of money you then owe the government, but it's based on a percentage. Yeah. So on a percentage basis, you think like Scientologists are given 20% of their income every year to Scientology?
Well, it's not like that. It's not like the Mormon church where you're tithing 10%, I think. They'll bleed you dry for every cent they can. And you may not have money. Like my friend who invited me to the Celebrity Center, she had no money. So we were looking at the grade chart. They have all of the courses you can take listed there from, the communication course up to OT8. And I said, where are you on the bridge? The bridge to total freedom is what this is called. And she pointed right way down at the bottom. So that's it? You've been in it for like 20 years and you're down there?
God,
and she didn't have the money. And she didn't want to join the Sea Org to work 17 hours a day in order to get some free courses. But I mean, you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. It used to be, and this was a couple of decades ago when I first started looking into this, that in order to reach OT3, where you find out about Xenu blowing up in a volcano, that would cost $360,000.
$360,000?
Yeah, to get up to that level, yeah. And it's well more than that now, I'm sure.
We got a long way to go, Leslie.
Yeah. And like actor Jason Begay, I sat down and did an interview with him back in 2008. That's still more people watch that video on my channel than anything else. Every day there's people who comment on that video and how much they appreciate him having talked about this. He joined and they got $1 million out of him in 1 year. And the
How
thing
did
is,
they do this?
Well, by explaining to him how much progress he's going to make. And, if you've got...
much.
Yeah. If you've got the money, they'd be happy to sell you all the bridge to begin with. And you have any family member, you should buy it for your wife too. You should buy it for, whoever you... There are Scientologists who borrow the money for people who don't have money, so they can buy the bridge, and then those people have to pay back the Scientologist who lent them the money. So the people who have money are even paying for other people's bridges.
Damn.
It's a remarkable Ponzi scheme that they have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they also had, what's interesting to me is how the continuity happened when L. Ron Hubbard passed away. Because you had this guy, and we've talked about him today, David Miscavige. I got it right now. He essentially took over in 1986, I guess like 3 days after Hubbard died. He announced it inside Scientology that he's dead, and now I'm in charge. And he's held an iron fist since then for almost 40 years. How did that happen? How did he become the guy, and how did he even get involved in Scientology in the first place?
Well, as a kid, he joined. His father was a Scientologist, probably his mom too. I don't remember offhand, but Miscavige got in early, and he had some problems that felt that Scientology cured. And he became a Commodore's messenger. When Hubbard was at sea, he would have usually cute little 14-year-old girls.
Oh, boy.
As his messengers. And there was no hanky-panky as far as...
We sure about that?
Well, we haven't heard of anything really. He just liked having them waiting on him night and day.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And they would be Hubbard's voice on the ship. He would be mad at somebody, and he'd call in a messenger and say, "You find Joe, and you tell that son of a..." and just curse up a storm. And she would have to go and find that person, and in the same tone as Hubbard, say, "You son of a..." And so all these people on board the ship would be terrified of these 14-year-old girls coming toward them, because they knew if this girl was saying this, Hubbard means business.
Oh, my God. It's like the Wizard of Oz.
So he became a messenger and found himself at a young age being one of the few people who knew Hubbard's desert hiding spot after his wife went to prison. Mm-hmm. There are only a couple of people that were allowed to go up to his secret location. And Miscavige was one of those. And the people who were living with Hubbard out there at that compound were supposed to take over. Pat and Annie Broker, I believe. Hubbard kind of had in mind that they would take over, but Miscavige, ruthless person that he is, decided, no, I'm going to have a power coup, and I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to get rid of everybody that I possibly can, since he spoke to the old man, Hubbard. People knew that he spoke to the old man. He just bullshit his way through this whole thing and got rid of anyone who was competition and took charge at a very young age. And there's a reason David Miscavige's father wrote a book about him and called it Ruthless. I mean, this guy is a piece of work.
Oh, yeah.
But it's amazing. Usually when a cult leader dies, the cult disperses. This one is held together.
What is it about his personality, you think, that makes him so magnetic to the followers? Minus, obviously, the ruthless.
Miscavige?
Yeah.
I don't know that he's magnetic. I think that it's probably just the fact that they really still believe in Hubbard and the tech. David Miscavige is supposedly protecting and safeguarding L. Ron Hubbard's tech.
He's Tim Cook to Steve Jobs.
Yeah, and anyone who's been critical of Miscavige, he's gotten rid of and put in the hole, like Mike Rinder, spent 2 years locked in a double-wide trailer with bars on the window.
What?
And all these executives, all these executives that would fall in disfavor with Miscavige, they'd be put in a hole.
But that's false imprisonment.
Well, yes, but you're imprisoned in your mind. And at one point, the FBI was going to go in there and raid the place. This was after Mike was out. And they had filled them in on all the things that are going on at the desert compound. But then, they were told, listen, if you go in and knock down the doors and barge in there and say, we're here to rescue you, the people who had been sleeping on the floor for 2 years, eating rice and beans, emaciated, would say, but it's my religion. I want to be here. That's the difficult part of trying to do something to help these people.
But if Mike Rinder in that situation said, I want to leave.
You would think it would be like in Guyana when Jim Jones had all of his followers drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
There were people who's the God, I can't think of his name now. Senator or Congressman Leo J. Ryan went down there because his constituents were worried about family members who had moved to this jungle in Guyana. And he and some of his staff went down there and said to the followers, listen, got a plane here. Anyone who wants to leave can come with me now. And they murdered him. There were people who slipped little notes to him to say, this is horrible. You got to get me out of here. And that's when he said, all right, anyone who wants to come can come. He was shot dead. And meanwhile, the other folks were told to, drink the Kool-Aid. A lot of people did. A lot of people said, I'd rather not. And a lot of those people who refused to drink the Kool-Aid, they were shot. You get to this point where, I mean, that's a serious cult. We're not really facing that with Miscavige and Scientology. I don't think anyone's going to go to those lengths.
You don't think they've killed people?
I don't think so. No, I think.
Do you want to not think so?
Well, it's kind of a tough thing to accept. You hear this all the time. That there are people who said, "Well, yeah, they tried to run me off the road," like Jerry Armstrong said that, and I believe that. I mean, I've had cars try to run me off the road, not Scientology people, but you see people out there doing crazy things with cars. And L. Ron Hubbard joked about what is it? There was something about guns, and I should know this. It's a number that would relate to a gun. Anyway, there's some process that he talked about. R245. That's it. R245. Just use that against someone, and you can silence them forever.
Oh, man. It's fascinating to me, though, that a guy who quite literally wrote everything down, that, like you said, the FBI was able to raid this stuff later. He wrote things bombastically for a living before he did this. It's interesting that his succession plan wasn't written down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's possible it was.
Correct.
But the only one who knew where it was Miscavige.
And he got rid of it.
Yeah.
That is very, very fascinating to me. Because there was a whole thing, too, and I'm trying to remember this story. This was a big thing like a year ago, and then I guess she got found. But like Miscavige's wife, Shelly, who I guess is also a Scientologist.
Yeah.
She went missing for a long time. What was the deal there? Like, she wasn't at Tom Cruise's wedding, and then no one heard from her for years, and now they found her?
Right. Leah Remini asked questions at Tom Cruise's wedding because Miscavige was there, and Shelly wasn't. And she was saying, well, where's Shelly? That got her in trouble, and that was the reason they brought her in to sec check her for a couple of months at the end of her career in Scientology, because she dared to ask Miscavige a question. And I'm sure it's just a situation like their marriage was crap, and just like Miscavige would have no problem sending off a husband to the other side of the planet and let the poor wife who still believes in Scientology slave away in the Sea Org. Right. I'm sure it's just the same way. The easiest thing to do is just send her to a different org, get her out of my sight. And my feeling is that she probably still believes in L. Ron Hubbard and still believes in the tech, and is happy to be slaving away at another org and just content. Well, that didn't work out, but
they did find her though recently, right?
Well,
she was located somewhere?
Was supposed to be up in Big Bear. And I did see a headline that she was spotted at another location. I didn't read the article, so I'm not sure where she's supposed to be now.
That's so mysterious.
I am less concerned about that. I'm more amused that it's become something that the entire world knows about. I mean, people
Where's
can
Shelly?
People can make that joke, especially John Oliver. Routinely ask, "Where's Shelly? Where's Shelly, Miscavige?" And I don't know if you saw this bit from last year when Mickey Mouse was about to go into the public domain. They got some guy dressed up like Mickey Mouse, and his new catchphrase, he said, "Where's Shelly?" And so for several episodes of Last Week Tonight, they came out and did awesome. That. Where's Shelly Miscavige?
Oh my God. And there was also something similar, I think, with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, right? Like they wanted to break. They thought Nicole was leading him astray from Scientology, and they wanted to break up that marriage.
I hear rumors, but essentially, her father is a psychiatrist.
Oh boy!
And so that was always a troubling aspect of their relationship to begin with, and I guess she was starting to have some doubts. She wasn't as hardcore as Tom, but she was still a Scientologist. For whatever reason, and I'm not privy to any of it, Cruise had a prenup with her. I think that, if they split before 10 years, she would get far less. And right as that was coming to that deadline, he said, we're done. In the press, it said he's you know what you've done, Nicole, but nothing was ever revealed as to what was going on. And frankly, I don't care.
Good for you. Yeah, there's bigger fish to fry.
Yeah,
we have a whole religious issue here, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane that people can put Ron Hubbard above their marriages, but
I guess they do.
They do.
Well, this has so far been a great full kind of crash course on Scientology and where it's gotten today. There's so much in the history. There's obviously some things we didn't get to, but what I want to do is let's break real quick, grab a bite to eat, and then come back and talk about what you've hinted at throughout today, which is your involvement over the years, how you came into this and what you're doing about it now down literally in Clearwater. I mean, this is what we talked about on the phone a ton. It blows my mind. So we'll be right back and we'll go through all that.
All right.
All right. We are back, everybody. I was just sitting down with you at lunch, already going through some of these things. And I was like, we got to get in the studio right now and not keep talking about this because it's good stuff. But I want to start at the beginning with you and the first time you even became aware of Scientology. When was it? How did it come up? And, was it something that then really became a part of your life later that you just kind of put to the side for a minute? Or were you right away gung-ho like, whoa, this is problematic?
Yeah, no, I can tell you exactly where it started. It was 1980. I was back in Wisconsin where I lived. And Mike Wallace came to Clearwater for 60 Minutes and did a piece called The Clearwater Conspiracy. And that was the first time I heard anything about Clearwater. This was shortly after they snuck into town in 1975. And it was all about the takeover and how upset the people of Clearwater were that Scientology had done this. And it was a fascinating story. At the end of it, Mike Wallace had a handful of Scientologists that Scientology provided him for the show to tell Scientology's side of this thing. And it was so bizarre because Mike would say something, well, here's the negative thing that we've discovered. And what do you think about that? I don't know that that's true. Well, if you saw this report, well, we wouldn't look at that report. No, we just wouldn't. We wouldn't look at it. We wouldn't read it.
Don't tell.
Yeah, they just wouldn't. They didn't believe anything could possibly be negative about Scientology. And of course, after that show ended, there was no internet. There were very few books published on it. So it was just kind of something that was stored away in my memory. And then in a few years later, I moved to California. And at one point, probably around 98 or so, I had moved into a home in the Hollywood Hills I was renting. Beautiful views.
And what were you doing at the time? Like, what was your career?
I was working for a market research company for the movie studios, and I was doing a lot of acting and voiceover work, stuff like that as well.
Oh, that explains all the good impressions. You did voiceover work. You got a good voice.
Well, it's kind of going now, but I started out as a radio guy back in Wisconsin, right out of college, and then moved to L.A. to do stuff in TV and film, and so it's always been something I've been interested in. Anyway, I'm living in this place in the hills now, and the woman who lived there before me was a Scientologist. And she didn't give them a forwarding address, which often happens when you decide you're getting out of Scientology. You don't want them to know where you are.
Oh.
So I kept getting all of her junk mail, all the copies of the Celebrity magazine and all these different publications they put out. And I'd be reading the articles. I'd be reading the ads for the e-meter. And it was all just bizarre. But, there was my first writings of L. Ron Hubbard that were sent right to my home. And so that got me interested again. And I started, going around to their properties. And, I read one or two books. My favorite was Barefaced Messiah by Russell Miller, I believe. Probably my favorite book because it's a biography of Hubbard that's incredibly readable, and it gives you the history of Scientology too, and a really nice, concise, fun, pleasant read. So I recommend that to anyone if they want to find out more about it. So I read that, and then I said, well, I'm going to go down and visit some of these buildings. So I'd go into Big Blue, their big headquarters on Sunset Boulevard, which is used to be the Cedars of Lebanon hospital that they bought, and they painted it this gaudy blue color.
Oh, no wonder. That does look, I was going to say.
Yeah. So I'd wander in there and goes, what goes on in here? And then they'd show me around. They'd give me a tour, and they would show me the orientation film again.
There's the building right there.
Yeah, that's it. Big Blue.
Mm-hmm. Big Blue.
And, I just feigned ignorance, and I went to the L. Ron Hubbard Life exhibition on Hollywood Boulevard. By the way, if you're in Hollywood, stop there. It's a treat. It was like a Disneyland of lies. Really nicely laid out, and it kind of it walks you through L. Ron Hubbard's life, so you find out about his Cub Scout adventures and then the Indian tribe thing, and it moves into his career in motion pictures. They claim he wrote Casablanca.
What?
He didn't.
How do you claim you wrote Casablanca?
Well, that's one of those things that just gets around the org. It's not something that they put in the Life exhibition. All they had there. The only thing that we know that L. Ron Hubbard had produced was one of these weekly serials, these like 16 or 40 episode short adventures that would play Saturday afternoons for the kids before a feature film. Yeah. And this one was, I think, something like Mysteries of Treasure Island. There's somebody out there who knows the name of this, and they're going to say, Bunker, you got to get this right. But I haven't thought about these things in years. Anyway, they have like a fake movie theater marquee and box office to show the name of that film on the marquee. The only time probably it was ever on a marquee.
Yeah.
And then next to that was these life-size animatronic figures from Battlefield Earth. Johnny Goodboy Tyler and Turl, the evil alien that John Travolta eventually played. So they have these figures just like like if you went to the Hall of Presidents at Disney World. They come to life and they do a little scene from the book. And oh my God, that's exciting.
I'm losing brain cells hearing about this.
Oh, it's wonderful. And then they usher you to a room, and this is what it was like when I was there. They usher you to a room where you sit down in a theater to watch a movie, and this is the story of Dianetics. And to introduce it, the lights come down in there, and a volcano arises in front of the screen. The lights go very dramatic, and the volcano explodes without really exploding, just with the sound and lights. It's like, oh my God. And that introduces the black and white film about Hubbard. And they hired a guy to play Hubbard, but it would be sacrilegious to show his face. So he doesn't say a word, and it's all shot from behind his back.
Oh, God. It's like
and it's so
Muhammad.
hysterical. It is brilliant. If you ever saw Miracle on 34th Street,
Yes,
which I'm sure
classic
everyone has,
movie, yeah.
you know, there's a scene at the end where they bring in all the letters to Santa Claus and pour them out in the courtroom and say, oh, this is Santa Claus. Well, there's a scene like that in this where some of the employees come rushing in. Ron, Dianetics is a hit. Look at this. And they're pouring out all the letters. And you just see Hubbard going, you gotta go. I hope it's still playing there. I hope they haven't changed anything about it.
I will be kicked out of there. If you knew me well, you only met me today, I'd be kicked out of there within 5 minutes. I know Alessi's nodding his head like, yes.
You know, it's you gotta play along and
I'd
just
be like,
enjoy
bullshit!
Bullshit! And you got to play with the e-meter and all.
Oh, you
this
get to
kind of
play
stuff.
with an
Yeah,
actual
you get to
e-meter.
hold on to the e-meter and they do a little pinch test.
What's a pinch test?
The pinch test, well, you're holding the meter and they pinch you and you watch the needle move. And then they say, okay, now remember the pinch. And you remember it and the needle moves a bit. Ah, see? That's the recording of the thought. That incident is recorded in your brain. And these negative incidences are what cause all your problems. Your reactive mind is always recording, even when you're unconscious or asleep. And there are things that happen to you that you can't make sense of. But Dianetics can help you recover all of these bad instances. And that's essentially what you're doing through Dianetics and through the early courses of Scientology. You're locating these troubling moments in your life. And you're walking through that situation again and again and again. So if you think about the pinch a few more times, it stops moving. The needle doesn't move.
Yeah.
So they go, see, you erased that bad incident from your life.
Do they have like a kiosk at the end of this thing where they're trying to recruit people too? Or is it literally just a museum?
I mean, it's all about recruitment. You're invited to, of course, come in and sign up. But it's primarily to say, oh my God, L. Ron Hubbard, he was a remarkable man, and you've got to understand this is the friend of mankind. He's the guy who has all the answers. So come on over and take a course. Let's see what. So when you're going through with Dianetics, and you're holding on to the e-meter, and you're talking about things that have troubled you in your life. You say, well, I remember when I was a kid, my dad hit me, and it was not nice. And they say, okay, well, tell me about that again. And you tell it again, and they say, all right, now go back and remember, did you hear any sounds in the background? There's a car going, and my father was smoking a cigar. So that explains why anytime you smell a cigar, you feel a little bit panicked because you're unconsciously remembering that your dad savagely beat you. And all you have to do is find out what that first incident is, erase it from your mind, and then
it's gone.
Eventually, your reactive mind will be clear of all those incidences. And that when you reach that state of clear, now you're ready to move on to the OT levels.
The concept, I just want to say this, the concept they have of rewiring certain impeti, if that's a word, plural, that goes into your brain, yeah, that's, I'll give them that. That's a psychological concept, but they make everything sound like it may not be like tomorrow, but it's going to go away. You're going to be good. That's not real. You can't, unless you know.
Well, what do you mean it can't be real?
It's not.
They're doing it. They're saving mankind.
You should have shown them. You should have gone in there and like shown them your voiceover reel and offered to do a live voiceover reel, and just blown the lid off the place. You should have done that. Like, everybody here, this is all bullshit. You are being lied to. It is not real. Get them out.
Yeah, be like those TikTok people on the streets.
Yes.
Run for your life. Don't take the course. At any rate, I'm digressing, as I often do.
No, this is great. This is great. You were talking about going through the museum for the first time, and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, and then the last step of it, you come into a room where there's a wall. You know how the music got really pretentious in the orientation video? You know,
yes.
big
Every video
overblown thing. Yeah. So they crank up the music, and this majestic thing happens where the walls part, and behind the walls that are moving out, it reveals all of these plaques that they've received from cities and countries around the world, all proclaiming Ron Hubbard as being this wonderful, brilliant man who's saving mankind. And I've seen how they do this. I mean, they did this in Clearwater when I was living there in 2000. The mayor read off a proclamation saying that this particular school, Clearwater Academy, was one of the finest schools in the country, according to the Concerned Businessmen of America. And the Concerned Businessmen they actually wrote a declaration for the mayor to read. And then they said, we'd like to have 3 copies of this, one for the school, one for our records, and then one for us to display back at the Concerned Businessmen headquarters. So they get this done, and then the next week I went in to say, okay, what you just did is do Scientology's bidding, because the Concerned Businessmen of America is a Scientology front group. And when they say, we've looked at all the schools in the country, and this is one of the finest around, it's Scientology saying, give a proclamation to the Scientology school. And I explained to the mayor, now they have you on display. So when parents come to the school, they can say, look, the city loves us. The mayor thinks we're amazing. You should bring their kids here. So that's what they do from lowest level all the way up to President Clinton had sent something to them. And they brag about all these things.
Damn it, Bill.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the closing. They do this type of thing in the orientation video, where they're showing plaudits from around the world, and I think the last one is President Clinton.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just another tiny little part of the scam. You know, how they can make themselves appear legitimate because they know what the public feels about them. They know how disreputable the organization's character is.
Now, when you say they,
the organization's slappy Miscavige, essentially. You know,
right, because I'm thinking
most Scientologists.
Like
most Scientologists think, well, we hear that Scientology is great, so that's all we hear. So Scientology is great, and they love us.
Because it seems like even like Mike Rinder was effectively like number 2. He was like the underboss, basically. And it seems like until he finally had his clarity, non-Scientology related, like let's get the fuck out of here. You know, he was into it.
Sure.
Right. So I'm trying to psychologically. It's hard because I've never been a part of that, but I'm trying to psychologically put myself in a person like that shoes and wonder if I actually would recognize how many people think we're a joke. Versus if I'm Miscavige and I'm just Miscavige and I'm just crazy and obsessed on power, I may know it and not care. You know what I mean? Like this, you think the senior level people, they all know it?
Miscavige knows.
Yes,
and,
yes, I would agree with that.
There was a really tragic death at the Fort Harrison Hotel back in 1995. Leah McPherson was a woman who was a devout Scientologist for many, many years. She had just attested to the state of clear. And like a month or two later, she was having a mental breakdown And she got involved in a little fender bender accident right outside the Fort Harrison Hotel. And when the paramedics arrived on the scene, she had taken off all of her clothes and was walking down the street naked. And this female paramedic comes up and says, "Why are you doing this?" And she said, "I need somebody to pay attention to me. I need help." And they took her a couple blocks away to the Morton Plant Hospital. And she was checked in there. And within an hour, 10 Scientologists showed up at the hospital and convinced her to check herself out against the doctor's wishes. And these 10 people took Lisa back to the Fort Harrison Hotel, and she was locked up in a cabana there for 17 days, last 17 days of her life. And her mental condition worsened every single day.
Yeah.
By her last day, she had lost 40 pounds. And she was so weak, they panicked. Rather than calling in a doctor or calling an ambulance, they put her in a van and they drove her to a hospital, but not Morton Plant 2 blocks away, not another 5 different hospitals that were closer. They drove all the way over to a hospital where there was a Scientologist doctor on call.
God.
And by the time they got there, she was dead. And this doctor, Dr. Minkoff, who had been prescribing medication without seeing her, he was freaked out. "Why'd you bring her here?" And of course, Scientology did this major cover-up where they, when the police, found out about this, the person who was in charge of this at that point was the real second in command, Marty Rathbun. Mike was like the third in command for Office of Special Affairs. But Marty whisked all the people who were watching over her out of the country. And they started doing what they could to clean up the situation. There were people who were watching over Lisa every single day.
Doing what? Like security guard, basically?
Well, L. Ron Hubbard has his own theories because psychiatry, of course, is evil.
Oh, God.
So he has his own method that he developed called the introspection rundown or baby watch. So what L. Ron Hubbard said is if you're having a psychotic break, which they would never use that term, but if you're in this condition, people should not be talking to her. So even if she's like talking to you, asking questions, begging for help, you don't respond. She has to have absolute silence. Anything you might say in a situation like that when she's screwed up, that could cause more implants,
this is sadistic.
More engrams. So, you can't say a word. And there were people who were put on the baby watch who didn't even speak English, so they didn't have to worry about saying a word to her. I met one of those people. Just a couple of months ago, I met one of the guys who said, I had just come to the country like a month earlier, and I didn't know any English at all, and they had me watching over her. But the people who did speak English were writing down logs of her condition every single day. And you could see her condition getting worse and worse and worse.
She's losing 40 pounds and 17. I mean, my God.
But she's also, becoming increasingly demented. She's barking like a dog. She thinks she's L. Ron Hubbard herself. She's smearing her feces on the wall. They're forcing medication down her throat with a turkey baster.
What were they giving her again?
Exactly what medicine she was on, I don't remember. You'd have to search that up. There's a couple other doctors who were involved. There's a female doctor who was prescribing a lot of this medication, and she was not licensed in Florida at all to be doing any medical work.
And what was her condition again from the very beginning of the story when they first took her there? Was she already a little manic?
Yeah, she had been having some psychotic break at that point, and And that's, why she was saying, I need help. And unfortunately, the Scientologists, including her boss, Benetta Slaughter, and some other people like Mary DeMoss, who was featured in a lot of my videos. She came out on the street to handle me quite often, and she was my favorite of the Scientologists because she was always...
To handle you?
Yeah, she was always brilliantly bizarre.
You ever let her take advantage of you?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
I did ask her out. I said... I said, let's have dinner. Let's go to the movie. We're both actors. I thought it'd be wonderful.
Fuck the Scientology right out of you.
Anyway, so these circle of her friends, her peers, said, you can't be here. They're going to put you in a psych ward. Nothing could be worse than having an evil psych doing horrible things to you, electroshock, and who knows what they're going to do, but they're evil. So, she came back with them to the hotel, and that was, the end of it for her.
That's insane.
Anyway, I forgot exactly why I got
You were bringing this up because we were going through your course to getting into really going up against Scientology. So you got involved after this happened.
Yeah.
What went down there?
Yeah. At that point, in the beginning of 2000, Bob Minton, who was the retired international banker who had spent about $10 million helping people abused and defrauded by Scientology, he decided to open up the Lisa McPherson Trust in Clearwater.
She's been dead for several years now.
She had been dead for 5 years.
Right.
But much of this wasn't publicly known for a few years until there was a trial. So there's a criminal trial brought that a lot of this evidence came out. And then there was a civil trial that Bob Minton was bankrolling for the family. And we started the trust. There were 4 of us to begin with who were working down there, moved down there. I was in charge of the multimedia. So I was videotaping, I was creating videos and putting up our website, things like that. This was the most fascinating time of my life. To be invited there, to be part of this bizarre situation where these Scientologists were going just nutso in front of my camera. After a couple of years of them looking goofy on my camera, they realized, we should stop doing
Not a
this.
good look. Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, it became kind of dull. They didn't want to say anything anymore. But anyway, that's around when I got started. In 1999, back in L.A., I started doing videos. The first one that I shot was when 2 Scientologists came to my home to picket me. I call that the revenge picket.
It's a short picket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, really short because I went out there with my camera and I started interviewing these guys.
Were they on your property?
They were out at the edge of the driveway.
So could you shoot them?
Well, I wasn't going to shoot. I shot them with the camera.
I was trying to get him to say, well, I could have.
I shot them with the camera, and that was plenty powerful. That morning, they had leafleted my entire neighborhood because I got a call from a neighbor saying, "Are you Mark Bunker?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "I'm supposed to beware you." And she had
dog. Beware of dog.
Yeah, beware your neighbor. Mark Bunker is not who you think he is.
That needs to be your campaign slogan. Beware the bunker.
Okay.
Oh, come on.
It's a little too late. I've got everything printed up already.
Let's do it. Come on.
So I knew, they had warned everybody that I was a dangerous individual, but at the bottom of it, they actually put in fine print that they were the Church of Scientology. And when people see that, they go, oh, well.
Right.
So we got a big laugh out of that. And there was a policeman who was living in the house above me. And I told him, listen, It's possible. I don't think it's likely, but they're picketing people at their homes now, so they may come and picket me here. And as I'm talking to them, I look out the window, and these two guys had shown up with big signs.
And this was a cop?
This was a cop,
And
yeah.
he wasn't loading the shotgun like,
No,
be my pleasure.
No one's shooting at them, okay? In none of my stories will Scientologists
Not
be
on
shot
my
at. Anyway, so I'm talking to these guys, trying to have a pleasant conversation with them, and within 3 minutes, I bring up Xenu, and one of the guys was not on that level, so he started walking away. So it was like bizarre that there were security guards in Clearwater who would be following me with their camera, and I could say 75 million years ago, Earth was known as Tigiak, and they would put their fingers in their ears
Oh my God.
and run away. What kind of security is that?
Not brainwash security.
I mean, it's amazing. So it was a fascinating time. And after a couple of years of that, well, there you go. This is the very
this is
first
from your
video I
channel.
shot. Uh-huh.
Which, by the way, everyone, the link to Mark's channel is going to be down in our description. You can go subscribe to it. It's Mark Bunker. It's got all the stuff you're talking about today. You've just been building this for a while.
Yeah.
It's really good stuff. All right, go ahead and play this, Alessi.
I think I know more than you in bigot. Well, if you would consider Scientology a religion, I
Oh my
suppose
God.
I might believe that, but unfortunately, it's a cult.
That dude don't even look real.
Ready to be an
Yeah.
All right.
Ads.
Yeah, I got to give you my premium. Do skip.
Oh.
It's over there on the right. Yep. There you go.
You know, deep down inside, you're trying to harm something that is good and helps other people.
Well, deep
Oh,
down
close.
inside, I'm trying to help you, is what I really feel. Because you probably don't know all of what your church does and all of what your church believes.
I
For
know a lot of
instance,
what my church does, and it's mostly helping people, you know. So.
well, where are you on the bridge?
Oh, Mark, I'm not going to listen to
Well,
you.
where are you online?
Where I'm on the bridge.
Well, just, you're here. I'd always like to talk to Scientologists. I'm trying to get your side of the story.
Have you ever done anything in Scientology yourself?
I went in, I took the personality test,
You've never
and
done
I
a course?
played with the e-meter.
Played with the e-meter.
Played with the e-meter. Well, the e-meter is kind of a toy. I mean, it's...
So you played with the e-meter. So,
Well.
in other words, you know nothing about what you're attacking.
I
You know nothing about what you're attacking.
I think I know
You know nothing.
more than you in many respects. For instance, I know about OT3, where Hubbard wrote that 75
Homeless John Lennon's laugh is really bothering me.
Oh my God.
and Tigiak was ruled over by the evil overlord Xenu.
He's walking
Stuffed us
away.
all into volcanoes and blew us up, thus causing all of the problems
That guy's
we
just,
still
he
suffer
is
from
perturbed.
today.
It's like, is this real?
Seems that all of those little invisible dead space cooties that were caused by the exploding volcano.
For people just listening right now who aren't on YouTube or Spotify watching this, go to YouTube or Spotify to watch this.
To clear yourself. That's
And we'll
innocent.
actually, I'm going to put the link to this down in the description so you can see this
You'll be
video
getting
on
to
its
that
own too. You can
OT3
actually
if
just
you
do
ever
that.
reach that level. Of course, it will cost you about $360,000.
All right, we got the point. Let's
Yeah, there you
stop
go.
that. But wow.
Yeah, and the other guy who stayed there, Dan Mernon, he stayed for like 20 minutes, and we were talking before he finally gave in. And Dan is still in and still believes.
Blonde guy with the goatee?
Yeah,
or
yeah,
homeless John Lennon.
yeah, not the guy who walked away. So Dan, I saw like 10 years later, Anonymous is out in L.A. And Dan Mernon pops up there, and he's saying the exact same things to them that he said to me, a decade earlier. And he still believes that. He's still in.
Do you know anything about his backstory?
His backstory?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
That'd be fascinating.
I
to see.
don't know how fascinating. I mean,
Well,
it's just...
no, I'm saying like to do an autopsy of how someone gets that brainwashed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like where did they come from to be in a position to become that?
that's your basic Scientology position. I mean, once you get sucked in, you're supposed to be heading toward that. That's the goal of L. Ron Hubbard and Miscavige. They want you to believe anything that they say and nothing that the public says. And you have those blinders on, so you won't hear anything else that's said. At any rate, it's sad.
What year did you say that video was?
That was 99.
Okay. So now you're like heavily involved in everything. Because we're at this point, obviously, you're now even going to city council. But between then, I think a really important point that I was completely uneducated on that you walked me through on the phone about Scientology that can help people understand why they're able to hold such an iron fist over at least part of Clearwater is how they're essentially building their portfolio for the church. So you talked about Miscavige is essentially buying all this real estate all over Clearwater and in other places, but let's focus on Clearwater, and filling it with nothing. He'll own buildings that are essentially abandoned ghost towns that are near the Scientology Center, so that it's almost like they create a Scientology ghost town for their entire part of town, which, by the way, also costs the city of Clearwater untold amounts of money for, if real businesses were able to go in there and actually add to the economy.
There are very popular downtown areas right around us. Dunedin is 10 miles away at the most, down the Fort Harrison Boulevard, right on the water the same way Clearwater is. They have a happening Main Street there. It's a much smaller city than Clearwater, but people dine there, shop there. It's an incredibly popular spot, especially for people in Clearwater who have nowhere else to go. And there's another place, Safety Harbor, which is right nearby as well. Very wonderful place to go and have a meal, and the place is always popular. We're dead, and we have been ever since Scientology snuck into town in 1975. They have turned it into a nuclear radioactive dead zone, and they like it that way. They have a campus there that Miscavige wants to keep people away from. Miscavige doesn't want prying eyes seeing anything that we shouldn't see.
Well, he's so small, I can barely see him. So,
well, there you go. You can take some binoculars with you and look down at them. But the thing is, there are people that I'll encounter. Like when I was running my first campaign for city council 4 years ago, knocking on doors, introducing myself, everyone had stories. Everyone had questions. Everyone was concerned. Pretty much every candidate says when you knock on the door, the first thing people ask is, "What are you going to do about Scientology?"
Oh, wow.
And I have the ability to say, well, I've been helping people abused and defrauded for 25 years now.
Wow.
And you may have seen me on Leah Remini's show, Scientology in the Aftermath. And so immediately people say, give me that clipboard, I want to sign a petition for you, and you got my vote. So that helped me in the first campaign, and that got me elected because it was pretty much this crazy guy talking about Scientology with no political career before this.
Outsider, yeah.
Yeah.
And you also said, like, people, you were telling me on the phone, people on the council historically are very afraid to talk about it publicly. Obviously, they may talk about it privately and not like it, but there's a fear there.
Well, historically, that wasn't always the case. I mentioned Gabe Casares, who was the mayor when they snuck into town. Gabe continued to actively speak out against Scientology for the rest of his life. And I got to know him when I moved there in 2000, and we became friends. So I spent a lot of time with him. And also Lieutenant Ray Emmons, who is the police lieutenant who was in charge of investigating Scientology for 20 years. I got to know him pretty well. Now, at that point, there was such an uproar. No one was afraid of taking on Scientology. Everyone on the council understood that this was a problem. And in 1982, after the FBI raids and all sorts of other stuff was uncovered about what they did in Clearwater, the city council held hearings in our council chambers for a week where they brought in an attorney who was representing a lot of people who had been former Scientologists or ripped off by them. And he brought in people like Paulette Cooper, the woman who wrote the book about Scientology and was attacked. L. Ron Hubbard's son, L. Ron Hubbard Jr., he came to testify.
When did he leave his father's care?
They were working together in the 50s, and I think somewhere in the 70s they had a falling out. Hubbard Sr., who was in hiding at that point, Junior tried to have him declared dead because there was no sign of him. So he went to court and tried to get this done, and then they faked. Well, they didn't fake, but they couldn't bring Hubbard forward because they would clap cuffs on him and take him away. So they would do things like I think he wrote a signature on something and they put something there. I don't know. They tried to pretend, hey, look, it's a signature.
He's alive.
He's alive. Yeah. So by then there was a family rift, and Junior had written a book with another co-author, ripping into Dad.
He knew it was all a scam.
Yeah. Yeah, but then they attacked him viciously, and Junior said, "Okay, I'm gonna settle, and I'll take back everything. Just leave me alone, give me the money, and I'll shut my mouth." So for a week there were these hearings, and Scientology had the option to come and give their own testimony. And they refused. At the end of the week, their attorney, who's not a Scientologist, he was just the top criminal attorney in the city. They always paid, the guy who is the big hotshot, they'll hire them. And he came and talked for like 10 minutes saying, this is nothing, this is nonsense, we're not even going to respond to any of this. I got videotapes of that entire week's worth of testimony, and I put that online back in 99, and you can still see it on that channel. So if you're interested at all in seeing what it was like in 1982 when no one was afraid on the council to take them on,
versus now,
that's what it was like. And unfortunately, over the decades, that faded away.
Is that because more and more Scientologists settled in Clearwater and because of the financial influence Miscavige has?
No.
No?
No.
Why is it?
What it is this is a problem that Clearwater itself couldn't solve. So they went to the state officials. They went to federal officials. They said, we need help. And people on the higher levels, they said, are they going to come after me? Are they going to attack me? It's a religion. So no one helped. Clearwater at one point passed a law saying that if you're not a religion, but if you're I can't even think of a simple phrase like nonprofit. Okay. If you're a nonprofit operating
like
here in the city,
501c3 type.
Yeah. You need to open up your books for us to check out. And clearly they wanted to be able to see Scientology's books. Scientology took them to court, and they won. And
how'd they win?
They said, listen, we have religious standing here. You can't just force us to open our books to you. And the court made the city pay them $1 million. After that, the city said, we can't afford this. And no one's helping. Let's just shut up about it. And
that's what did it.
Yeah. So by the time we came to town with the LMT in 2000, the city was upset with us for bringing trouble to the city. They had Scientology off the front page of the paper. And us coming there brought Scientology back to the paper. And people in City Hall thought, well, we're the problem. If we weren't causing all this trouble, then Scientology, who are the ones who are going nuts in the streets of, protesting us, this would all quiet down and no one would even know Scientology was here, which was nonsense.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because, from 75 on, nobody wanted to go downtown because of Scientology. And when I came to town, one thing that Scientology did was protest the police department. They were marching around the police department at one point.
Why?
Because Sid Klein, the police chief, was investigating Scientology, So they were walking around with signs saying, Sid Klein, what's your crime? Sid Klein, what's your crime? So I came to town and I knew what the police had been going through. And one of the first things we did was go to Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast. And the Sid Klein and his police chiefs were all around him. And I thought, well, I'm going to go say hi. And I went over to him and I put out my hand and said, it's a pleasure meeting you. I want you to know I'm a big fan of the Clearwater Police. And he wouldn't shake my hand. He just glared at me and said, if you get my way, I'll arrest you. And I went, oh, this is not what I expected when I moved here to Clearwater. And
so do you think you were a Scientologist?
No, he thought I was a pest. I was causing problems that he was going to. But that was the general feeling. Bob and Stacy Brooks are the president of the LMT. Went and sat with the then city manager, a fellow who used to be a city manager in Miami. Can I think of his name right now? No, I can't.
All right. You're remembering a lot of good stuff today.
Yeah.
You're doing good.
So this guy says to Bob and Stacy, we got Scientology off the front page of the paper, and you're putting them back on there. And he threatened them that he would shut us down. And I think that was a rude awakening for Bob and Stacy that this was happening. But meanwhile, the public were behind us, and while we were there, we did help a few people get out of Scientology. We educated a lot of other people.
Wait, how'd you do that? How'd you get them out?
There were people, like my friend Tori Chrisman. She was actually, it was the internet that got her out. Tori was a member for 30 years. And I met her in L.A., where she and her husband lived, at some of the protests. So she would come out to handle the critics when we were out there. And I have videotape of her coming up to me the very first time. Yeah, that's Tori there. This is when she's out already. But when I first met her on L. Ron Hubbard Way.
I'm just asking you, why can't you, communication, communication is the universal solvent. But it's not solving here.
You'd say that you did something in Scientology, right?
I was up to OT7.
Right. So
for 7 years.
Apparently it doesn't matter, does it?
It didn't work for me. And I don't know how other people didn't work for. Apparently not. And it wasn't that I was a failed.
Oh, I love the alien blow up right there.
Yeah.
That's good.
You know what I say?
So this guy was a current Scientologist. So the roles were reversed. When I met her, she was the one saying, well, what are you doing here? We're
so nice.
Yeah.
Come on, it's a beautiful religion.
First time she came up to me, she put on a really bad English accent and lied about her name. I said, I'm Mark Bunker. Who are you? And she said, I'm Margaret. What are you doing here? And, we had
too stupid to be
we had a pleasant little conversation. And then I would see her at a few other protests, and we always got along well. She and her husband, JR, was the name he was using. I would talk with them, and they were nice people. And I'm nice, so we got along fine. There were a couple other critics that were a little harsher, and they didn't like them, but I'm adorable. You got to admit.
You are a very nice guy. You disarm people very quickly. I'm surprised these people, I understand it's like, well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but normal people, I would think, would be able to at least calm down and have a conversation with you eventually.
Yeah, you'd think so.
Yeah.
Like Tori could. So the LMT had opened, and this is like a couple of years after I met Tori. Tori, meanwhile, was still fighting with me online when Battlefield Earth came out. Oh, that was a fun period. I took my camera to the movie theater for the premiere, and I grabbed kids coming out of the theater to get their reaction. And it was all stinker, the type of stuff.
You're the
Put that
TMZ
online.
of Scientology.
Yeah.
Effectively, right?
So there was a website for Battlefield Earth on the Warner Brothers page, and there was a forum. So Tori, under a different pseudonym, and another Scientologist were on there constantly writing things like, "Oh, I just saw it for the 4th time today. I'm taking my kids tomorrow," and I would respond in my own inimitable way, and point out some of the things that were less talked about there. Like, for instance, I put up a review of the first draft of the script before the film was released that showed how horrible it was. I reviewed that and printed it, and suddenly there's this remarkable rave for the movie from this other dude, and I went online and hunted down this guy who did the review, and it turned out that he had a bio on another site saying, and this year he's being paid to do publicity for Battlefield Earth by the Church of Scientology.
Oh
So
God.
I would go onto the message board and put the link there and say, see, that's what it takes to get a rave review. You have to hire somebody to do that. And she'd get so mad at me. And I didn't know it was Tori until later. But she had enough, and she announced online that she was leaving Scientology. And it was recommended by Andreas Heldo Lund, who had a website called Xenu.net, which is still out there. Andreas died just recently. But Andreas said, you should go talk to the people at the Lisa McPherson Trust.
Mm.
So Tori called us, and Stacy came in to say, there's this woman on the line who says she knows you. And she gave the pseudonym of the person who was attacking me on the message board, and I went, her? She's horrible. But then she put me on the phone with her, and I recognized Tori's voice immediately. You? I love you. And yeah, she was trying to strike an effective blow. It's one of those things that I didn't really hate me, but she had to stop the negative in theta, is what Scientology calls it. So then she came down to Clearwater, and we gave her sanctuary there and helped her decompress.
What's that like? Because
it's not easy.
How many years had she been in it?
30 years. And she lost her husband over it.
Oh my God.
He disconnected from her.
30 years.
Yeah.
Destroyed her life.
Yeah.
Suddenly she's like, oh my God, woke up. And then you have her in a room drinking coffee. Like, what is that conversation like?
Well,
took you long enough.
I was not perhaps the best exit counselor. Let me say about being in a room with her. When she came to Clearwater, she had a ticket from Bob Minton to fly from LAX to Clearwater. And when she got to the airport in LA, a Scientology bigwig was there to meet her and say, Tori, you can't go. You can't go with these people. And Tori called Bob and Stacy, and Bob said, I'm going to get you a first-class ticket so you can go in the lounge where she can't go. And he did that for her. And then she had to switch planes in Chicago, and her husband was flown out there to meet her at the transfer to say, you can't go talk to the people at the LMT. You can't. And she said, I'm sorry, I'm going.
Wait, is that a new husband?
No, this is Harold, the husband who would eventually disconnect from her.
Oh, I misunderstood.
They're still together.
that.
I'm sorry. They were together at this point until she decided she'd had enough.
I thought it was he during that 30 years.
He disconnected. But it was after she had come down here and said, okay, I'm totally out.
Wow.
Anyway, he met her in Chicago, and then he flew down here and found out where she was staying. And she was staying at a hotel room that we got for her at this nice place. And I was there when Harold came to the door. And Tori was in her nightgown. And Harold, the door opened, and Harold saw me and Tori there and was not at all thrilled with the very sight of that. There was no hanky-panky. It was just something that he wasn't expecting. He did.
I don't believe him. I think that's Mark's secret. He's like the Hugh Hefner of anti-Scientology. It's like, come on down to the mansion. You're going to leave reformed.
It'd be nice if women were throwing themselves at me. Unfortunately,
okay.
There's still time, ladies.
Let's get some hidden cams down there by his place. See what's going on. Okay.
I'm not exactly sure where I was going with this, but
we're talking about people who left the church.
Yeah,
and like what it's like. Yeah. It's a crazy, crazy journey because there's people who are in this thing for way longer than I've been alive. And I try to imagine, and you can't, what that's like to adhere to something and then suddenly one day be like, you know what? It's all a lie.
Yeah.
I got to go.
Okay. Here's why I said I wasn't a very good exit counselor, because that wasn't really my position. But we took Tori up to Bob's home in New Hampshire, and she spent some time with us there. And Bob and Stacy were in the house. I was out on the lawn with Tori, talking to her, and Tori's telling me about all the wins she had. It wasn't all bad. I had so many wins. And I said, well, yeah, but I think the people at Jonestown would have told you they had wins before drinking and she burst into tears. And it wasn't anything, I thought I was being logical.
That's a great line.
When you're in a group like this, you're getting something from it until you realize, no, I'm not.
Wow.
But she, that did not go over well. And I went in where she was crying, and Bob and Stacy said, what did you say to her? And I said that, and they went, no, you didn't. I went, okay.
I'll bet that was important though.
Well, I don't
because she's upset about it obviously at first, but then when you get a minute to think about it, like, whoa.
Yeah, probably there's a gradient scale. We should wait a while before spring or something like that when she's in a delicate condition to begin with. So it's just me, a dope, thinking, well, I'm being logical.
But what happens to a woman like her once she does meet with you guys and now, it gets back to Scientology, like, oh, we lost her, she left. Does she get PIs put all over her by Scientology or threatened?
Yeah. They at that time, they were absolutely checking up on people. I don't remember her being terribly afraid of it, but she was convinced that people were screwing with her car and things like that. But it's a journey. It takes a while to peel away those layers.
Yes.
And she became one of the biggest spokespeople and helpers of getting other people out of Scientology following that. And she's got a beloved following. One of the things I did right away is bought her a webcam so she could be doing her own videos from her home. And so there's a lot of people who know her and love her.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you need people like that. It's so impressive when you see the depth that some of these people who have left are willing to go to on camera, because in some ways you could be like, you might be a little self-conscious of it. You were in it for so long, but once you hear them talk, whether you watch Going Clear or you watch the documentary you were in with Leah, you know, it's not like a lot of them are dumb people. Like, a lot of them are actually pretty smart people.
No.
And now they've come to.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because that's the first reaction I had when I found out about Xenu. I thought, well, you got to be really stupid to believe this stuff. But you don't hear anything about that stuff for the longest time. It takes you a lot of money and a lot of time before you reach the level where they say, okay, I think we can trust her enough to give her this OT material. And believe me, you have to jump through hoops to prove that you're worthy of that. Because they know that, I mean, I've talked to at least one person who said, they gave me the material, I read it, and I went, oh my God, what have I been doing here? And they left quietly.
Was that Paul Haggis?
But for most people, no. This was a woman that I had encountered at there was a group that Dennis Ehrlich was actually a part of. There was a woman, Priscilla Coates, who was a woman who was helping members of former cults of various stripes. And every Sunday at her house, she would have like a meeting with people who were Scientologists, Moonies, things like that. And they invited me over one time. And this woman was a Scientologist who told me that that was her experience. She just walked away after seeing that. But that's not always the case. You're expected to be ready to believe anything Hubbard told you at that point. It's a fascinating story. It's a difficult story, but I thought that people had to be stupid, but you realize that no, these are smart people. They're dedicated people. They're good people that really believe they're saving the planet. So I can't say that I've met any Scientologist that I dislike except one. There was one guy, Dennis Clark, who was this big brute who was punching people. And you can see some of that in one of my videos. There's a video called Scientology and the Clearwater Police, which was a 20-minute video I did back in 2000 to show what it was like when the police officers were working off-duty for Scientology. Scientology realized, hey, we've got the money. We can pay an officer to sit down here on the street, and we can feed them the steady stream of negative stuff about us.
What did you say you told me this on the phone. Did you say their coffers are estimated at like $3 billion or something like that?
I think they're at $3 billion now, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so what are we looking at here on the
screen?
This
is a video that I did that showed some incidences where it sure seemed like the officers who were being paid by Scientology were willing to do Scientology's biddings or not to pay attention to anything that we said.
Okay, let's play this right here.
White shirt walking off to the right.
Yeah, that's the city manager who
Scientology hired the first pair of off-duty police officers, but the rules change daily.
I just want a clear, firm response from the police department on what the rules are here.
In bending over backwards to appease Scientology, Roberto and the police department created new laws on the spot that even its own officers couldn't understand.
So I can't go across the line now? No?
Even worse than the confusion over how to manage the white lines is the byproduct of the creation of this rather unique bus unloading zone. You see, now a large percentage of the Clearwater police force work directly for Scientology. Whoa. And they're supposed to report to Mike Rinder, the head of the Office of Special Affairs. Again, this is the new name for the Scientology department that once broke into the FBI and the IRS, stole documents, bugged offices, and that to this very day continues to destroy the lives of those
Can you pause
who
this,
Scientology perceives to be.
I got there's two things I would really like you to go through from this, because this is perfect, because it just came up. Number one, this video is made years ago, long before Mike Rinder actually left.
Yeah, he was still in.
Right. So he was still in, obviously.
I have video of him trying to have us arrested.
Oh my God. And now you're like friends with him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because he's out.
Sure.
Okay. So first question is, what happened when he got out, and how quickly were you in contact with him, and what was that like?
He got out because they pulled him out of the hole to handle a PR flap when the BBC did was doing a story on Scientology. There's a terrific journalist there, and again, forgive me. I'm blanking on his name right now. John Sweeney. So John Sweeney is like the Mike Wallace of the BBC. Nationally known guy who's really terrific. And he was doing a piece on Scientology where there was a new PR person for Scientology, Tommy. Oh God. Tommy something or other.
Okay. Tommy Scientologist.
So Tommy, I should know this. He's Ann Archer's son, but it's not Tommy Archer. But at any rate, this guy was taking over the job that Mike Rinder did before Mike Rinder was thrown in the hole. And there was such a flap from this show that Miscavige pulled Rinder, the emaciated, pale, thin Rinder, out of the hole and said, "You get over to England and you handle this right now." And so John Sweeney in the BBC show is asking Mike Rinder, does David Miscavige beat people? And Mike's going, "No, of course not." And Mike Rinder is one of the people that Miscavige was beating. And yet,
he's walking in there with a black eye, cuts all over his face and shit. Nah, of course not.
And really, at this point, he looked like death warmed over. So this continued to be a bad situation where Miscavige was furious about how Tommy did and how Mike did. And this was not being stopped. This was still going to air. And things got so bad for Mike when he was over there. He just said, "I'm done. I'm not going back. I'm out of Scientology." It meant that he'd be losing his wife and kids and every friend who was a Scientologist. But he had come to the breaking point and said, "That's it. I can't do this anymore."
And when did he contact you?
I didn't really meet him for probably a couple of years after that.
What was that like?
Well, it was interesting. We had lunch and at a nice restaurant in Dunedin, because there were none in Clearwater. And I remember one of the, he was a good guy. We had a nice chat. And I asked him at one point, "So what did you folks think of me?" And I was hoping there'd be some, "Oh, Mark, your videos were such a pain for us." But it was like, "Oh, Mark, you were the friendly videographer who would wave at us. We didn't really think about you." "What? I'm supposed to be tearing this place apart, destroying Scientology. You're not even thinking about me?" And then after that, I think we met that time because I wanted him to sit down and do an interview with me, and that went well. So he said, "Yeah." So I then took my equipment over there and did a long form interview with him shortly after he had left. It was interesting, we've remained friends. There have been times when, like, I took him with me and Aaron Smith Levin to talk to the FBI about the racketeering with these buildings.
And you said the FBI won't do shit about this.
FBI said, if you got to have evidence, you got to have somebody who's in right now who comes out with evidence or says, if you go to this room, open up that desk drawer, you'll find the evidence you need.
He owns the buildings; they're all empty. How's that not evidence of something?
Well, it doesn't prove that there's some coordinated effort to do this, but. If there was someone who could say, yeah, here's the planning thing that Miscavige put together about this. But the FBI says we have to go to a court to get a warrant to go in and do a raid.
That's the first time the FBI said we need a warrant for something. Jesus Christ.
I don't know about that.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Some things it feels like they go to these FISA courts. We've seen it. I've had guys on here on the podcast where it's like, yeah, just toss that through. And they toss it through.
Yeah.
So if they really wanted to do it, they could.
They probably could, At any rate, that and we had we hired a new city manager and a new city attorney a couple of years ago, and I had Mike Rinder come in and talk to them to explain what it's like dealing with Miscavige. This is not like anybody else that you've had to deal with. This is a particular problem, and. I want to show you one other part of that police video in just a moment if we can go back to it.
Yeah, we can't show that Battlefield Earth thing unless it's a trailer. We definitely cannot do that.
It's scenes from the trailer, actually, I think. But what was I talking about?
We were talking about Mike Rinder. I actually, in the meantime, if you don't mind, while he's pulling that up, the second thing from that video you had mentioned that I wanted to ask about was the IRS thing. What happened there? That was like a giant war. I think this is really important to describe just how far the Scientology religion's willing to go.
Sure. Before we get into that, can you move just a little bit farther on here? You're going to see a scene where we're in the street, and there's a guy who comes after me with a hammer.
With a hammer?
Yeah. Oh, this section right here.
All right, go to 7.
I'm with a couple German filmmakers who are trying to interview a Scientologist artist, painter.
Press it.
And we go to his house, and they're knocking on his door.
We believe these videotapes show a clear pattern of bias against the Lisa McPherson Trust on the part of the Clearwater Police Department. This first piece of footage was shot on February 1st of the year 2000. 2 German filmmakers had asked me to come along as they shot a documentary about a famous German Scientologist artist who now lives in Clearwater. The day before, the German filmmakers had gone to the police department and asked if it was legal for them to knock on the door and ask for an interview. Wayne Shallor, the police spokesperson, assured them it was. As we headed back to our cars, a man ran out of the house with a hammer.
Uh-oh.
What if I smash that fucker for you? Oh, smash it. You better go. I called the cops. Get the fuck out of here.
Is this?
Get the fuck out of here.
On the public?
Yeah, well, guess what? I'm on the public property, too. You wanna start some shit with me?
Ooh, feisty son of a bitch.
The man's name was Richard Barnard, and he claimed to be an electrician doing some work inside the house. Barnard struck the camera twice with a hammer and once with a screwdriver. But even more unsettling than the attack from Barnard was the reaction of the Clearwater Police Department.
Police is coming.
The first to arrive on the scene was Officer Terrence Kelly. According to recently released documents, Kelly is one of the police officers who works for Scientology on his days off.
That's okay. Can you explain?
Yes, these are German documentary filmmakers who are here shooting a film about Scientology. They've had several documentaries that have been produced already. They're trying to get an interview with the person in this house here. These 2 gentlemen, and I came along just to videotape to make sure that nothing happened.
Good afternoon.
Excuse me?
You've been up on...
Yeah, I work for the Lisa McPherson Trust. These fellows came into town and just asked me to come along as backup. Okay.
Oh, now he wants all your ideas. That turned around quick.
Yeah, he did. He hit the camera.
Let me see everybody's ID. Driver's license, ID card. What do you got?
There you go. Now, in a moment, I'm going to turn off the video camera after Officer Kelly expresses some concern about it continuing to run. In fact, Officer Kelly was more concerned about my video camera than he was about the hammer attack. After I turned off the camera, Officer Kelly told me it's a felony to record people's voices without their permission.
Oh, boy.
In fact, he threatened to arrest me for the footage you just saw.
This is pre-George Floyd era, I guess.
I told Kelly once again that a man attacked us with a hammer and that I had the whole incident on videotape and I could roll it back and show it to him.
Oh, smash it. You better go. I called the cops.
His response to me was a question. Did you inform that gentleman with the hammer that you were recording audio? If not, that's a felony.
Yeah, well, guess what? I'm on the public property, too. You wanna start some shit with me?
The next officer on the scene was Officer Holzenbach, who also refused to look at the videotape. Holzenbach is one of the regulars working the white lines on Watterson Street. Scientology pays the officers $21 an hour for a total of $178 per day.
They were bought off for
Holzenbach's total
$178
pay
a
for the first
day?
8 months of the year 2000 was $2,848.
Cheap date.
It wasn't until a sergeant arrived on the scene that anyone took a look at this videotape. The sergeant ordered Officer Kelly to do an investigation, yet Officer Kelly refused to even ask this man for an ID. If he had, he would have discovered that on this day, Richard Bernard gave the police a phony name, a phony birth date, and a phony social security number. It was only later discovered that Richard Bernard had skipped bail on a cocaine trafficking charge.
Nice.
He is now serving a 1-year prison sentence in Key West.
Love that.
Okay. So, I sincerely believed that these officers weren't bad people or bad officers, but when you're sitting there taking money from them and they're telling you how evil we are, it does tend to influence you.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what we were trying to show with this video. Now,
it's a great video.
It's 24 years later. This video has been up all this time. It has not been, pleasant for the police department. They have been upset about that in the past. They still get guff about it. And everyone thinks that, they're being paid off by Scientology, which is not true. But I think it's interesting to say that even with this history, the fact that my video is still there, I'm amazed and appreciative of the fact that the Clearwater Police FOP endorsed me in this race.
Wow.
4 years ago, that would not have happened.
Or 180.
Yeah. They, the first time I ran, I was this crazy guy going to talk about Scientology. No one wanted to be attached to this at all, except Leah Remini was nice enough to endorse me, and that went a long way. This time for my re-election, I'm getting so much more support. The
awesome.
fact that the police are supporting me, the Clearwater firefighters endorsed me, people from around the community that had doubts about me have said, we've been watching you, and you got my vote.
How do you want to solve this? If you're put on there, obviously you don't have eminent power to do whatever you want. It's part of a council. But if you could sway your fellow councilmen and all the interested parties in decision making to come on your side, what would be your solution to the Scientology issue?
That's the problem. Finding a solution, because it's not easy. Ultimately, the only thing that's going to really make a difference is if their tax-exempt status is revoked. And I think we do need to be reaching out to folks in Congress to see if we can get some hearings held. Now, things have been so nuts over the past many years in Washington, D.C., that nothing gets done.
Yeah.
So that seems like a long shot, but that's something we really need to work on, that there's got to be somebody there we can reach out to start some hearings, because what they're doing should not be tax exempt.
What about using also with respect to their real estate holdings, all the empty shell places they basically have? What about using some sort of eminent domain to take
Eminent
that
domain
back?
is something that I've been talking about all along. There are a lot of things that I talk to our city attorney about. There are things that you think would be easy solutions, but they're not, because it's not illegal to buy buildings. It's not illegal to leave them empty. Eminent domain is something we can use and something we probably will use. But when you do that, you have to use that property for a government use. You can't say, okay, we're taking this property and we want you to put up
That's right.
an Apple store on this location. Developer, go ahead and do that. We could, if it's something that is a government use, like we say, we need a parking structure. We could do that because we spent $84 million to put in a really beautiful park down there now and an amphitheater. There's a crushing need for parking. So there are a couple spots that Scientology has that would be ideal for us to take. One I'd like us to use is the Clearwater Marine Aquarium lot. This is back in around 2017, I think it was. The aquarium was going to move downtown. Part of it was going to move downtown on the bluff there, right next to, right behind the Fort Harrison Hotel where Lisa McPherson stayed in the cabana. David Miscavige wanted that property. The aquarium owned it. Miscavige sabotaged the plans for the aquarium to open there. And then once they killed that, they then tried to ruin the reputation of the man who was in charge of the aquarium, David Yates. They had a huge campaign to smear him. David Yates and the aquarium decided they're going to sell that lot that Miscavige wants to the city instead of to Miscavige. Miscavige was furious because he was offering like $15 million. The city bought it for $4.5 million. So after that, that's when Miscavige said, all right, he went radio silent, stopped talking to the city. And in the paper, he said there was a vote with the council about accepting David Miscavige's plans for what he wanted to do for the downtown. He said, you give me that lot, and I will put new facades on every store in the area, and I will pay for this myself. We've got a guy in Tampa who, as a business recruiter, he'll fill up all of these buildings with businesses. All I want is that property. And the council at that point said, no, we don't want you to have it. And he was furious. He stopped talking to the city, and in the paper he said, I'll wait for the next council. And the next council, he got me.
Tough shit, Dave.
Yeah. So in the meantime, secretly, he was organizing this thing to buy up all the property at 2, 4, 6 times the market value. So if we want to use eminent domain to buy one of those properties back, it's going to be at that inflated price. So it costs the city a lot.
Yeah.
We can't, they spent close to $200 million now to buy property downtown and in the Marina District right nearby. For us to be paying that money to buy everything back, we can't. And there's no use for us. That we can't put it to use if we use eminent domain for all of it. So that's a tactical thing that we can use here and there. There's all sorts of other solutions that people are suggesting. Frankly, it's a tough situation. I'm going to continue reaching out to state and federal authorities, trying to get help. But again, it's just like it was 20 years ago. People say it's a religion.
I think the other problem is, as you said, there's something like only 20 to 30,000 people in the religion today, and it's it's focused more heavily in one town in America. And so looking at it from a DC perspective, they're like, oh, these fucking people are crazy, but, it's lower on their totem pole.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, that's a lot of people who are unknowingly falling victim to something terrible. I'd like to think that if we could go back and redo the Jim Jones thing and stop that, not to say they've gone that far to like, you know, have everyone swallow a pill and kill each other, but, you know, things like this can devolve into that.
Yeah.
You know, so when you see something sick like this happening live, I feel like there should be some impetus to fix that. But again, it's just priorities. But I'm happy to see someone like you is in your local community is taking the bull by the horns and trying to do something.
So my position right now is, you know, the city's been talking about a land swap with Scientology for years now. And my feeling is Miscavige has to go first. And I've gotten that one concession from the city that whatever deal we make is not going to include the aquarium lot. The CMA lot will be held until Miscavige comes through.
Got it. And you've never met him, you said, right? You've never been in...
No. He seems to be reluctant to meet me because every time there's a meeting with city officials, they say, I'll come. I'll be happy to come and negotiate. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I'm not invited.
Well, you're going to tower over him. That's probably affecting his ego a little bit.
I will stay seated.
High level. Love it.
Even seated, I tower over him.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So before we get out of here, this has been amazing, by the way. Like this is you want to talk about people getting an education on what this really is from the grassroots, like you have given it today. So thank you so much for doing this. But before we get out of here, I don't want to be remiss and forget to go back to the IRS thing that's come up like several times and what that was. Can you just explain like how deep Scientology went to go to war with the IRS?
Oh, yeah, they did. They declared war. In fact, they declared the war was over when they got the IRS to buckle. And if you go online, you'll see on my channel a very lengthy video from Marty Rathbun, where he talks about some of the ways Scientology... Well, wait a minute. No, I'm thinking about a video about the Lisa McPherson case. He was revealing a lot of things about how they botched, how they were able to kill the Lisa McPherson case, which is really interesting to hear. On the IRS thing, he was there. I don't think I put any video of that part of the interview up. But they went all out to have this campaign where they were doing... Miscavige actually did like a 30-minute infomercial about the evils of the IRS.
And what was the impetus of it? Like, why was he going to war with the IRS? Because they thought they were going to lose their tax-exempt status?
They did not have their tax-exempt status. They were fighting for it.
Okay.
There were long periods where they did not have it. And the IRS was going to charge them for back taxes that would have bankrupted the place. So Miscavige had to pull out all the stops. They were following individual IRS agents around. They put together programs where if you were a whistleblower, you should report to them and expose IRS crimes. And they put out full-page ads in newspapers attacking the IRS and the commissioner. Finally, at the end, there were like 1,000 lawsuits from individual Scientologists filed in 1 week. And the IRS commissioner met with them and said, all right, if we give it to you, will you call off all these lawsuits? And Miscavige said, sure, absolutely. And that's what happened. The guy said, all right, uncle, you can have it. Stop with the harassment.
Wow.
And you know, that's pretty remarkable. That
a religion like this of not many people could do that to the IRS.
Not that many people, but a lot of money. And that's what it takes. Yeah.
And when was that again?
Roughly? That was, I think, 95.
Wow.
I believe.
It's crazy that these aren't bigger stories.
Well, I mean, it was a big story at the time, huge.
But it's ignored in history. You know what I mean? It may be, it gets its spurt at the moment. You know, Leah goes on Joe Rogan 6 years ago, got spurred at the moment, right?
Sure.
She does her documentary, gets a spurt at the moment, but then it kind of shuffles away. Like, oh yeah, that thing, Scientology.
Sure. It's going to take something major for actions to be taken. All we can do is keep pushing for it. And that's what I'm continuing to do.
Well, keep on keeping on. You're doing some amazing work. Your channel has incredible content from really the last 25 years on there. So again, we'll put that link in the description. And this episode is going to be coming out right around the time of your election on March 19th. So I wish you all the best in that down in Clearwater. And I hope to see that you end up getting co-support on your council to work on some of these measures and hopefully get some attention on it nationally so there can be a little top-down help. That'd be very, very cool.
Yeah, it would be nice. I wish we had 4 council members and a mayor who were willing to take them on like in the good old days. So far, it's me against the giant.
All right, guys, come on. Let's get on board, everybody. Let's do it. Mark, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Everybody else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace. Thank you guys for watching the episode. Before you leave, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. It's a huge help. And also, if you're over on Instagram, be sure to follow the show at Julian Dorey Podcast or also on my personal page at Julian D. Dorey. Both links are in the description below. Finally, if you'd like to catch up on our latest episodes, use the Julian Dorey Podcast playlist link in the description below. Thank you.